All right, they told me they wanted me up here tonight, so I'll stand up here. I apologize, y'all. They were here at 2. It went 2, 2:15, 2:10, and 2:20. So let's start with prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you so much for your love and your care. And Lord, we ask that you will give us wisdom this afternoon as we continue to learn. Again, help us to gain this information, not for ourselves, not to be selfish of ourselves, but that we can use it to help others. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So this afternoon we're going to talk about, or let me just say there was 3 things on the agenda, but we'll do whatever y'all want to do. The 3 items on the agenda were cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and cancer. Someone yesterday evening asked me if I could postpone cardiovascular, so we'll do that second. So we'll start with diabetes. There's diabetes is something that plagues a lot of folks, and it's sad because, as I say, diabetes is easier to reverse than toenail fungus. It really is. Toenail fungus is tough. It can take you 6 months to a year to get rid of toenail fungus. And with diabetes, we can see it reverse very quickly, dependent on how quick they can come and that they can go away from the root cause. So the first thing is there's type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes. And we used to call type 1 what? Juvenile diabetes. And we called type 2 diabetes what? Adult onset. And the challenge is when we started getting 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds that had type 2 diabetes, and it just didn't work out right in the documentation. And so it was changed. And they actually tell us that if they understood diabetes when they named them diabetes as they do today, they wouldn't even give them the same name. Let's start with type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is where you have insulin resistance. And the key to health, Mrs. White says, the cure is in what? The cure is in the cause. The cure is in the cause. So what do you have to do then? You have to go find the cause. When I would go to healthcare facilities, and my job was to go and fix problems, and it was either one of 2 things. Either they did not have policies and procedures, or they weren't using them. Pardon? They weren't using them. So either they did not have them in place, or they didn't have staff that were using the policies and procedures. And so or it could be both. It could be a combination. So the key is make sure you had policies and procedures, and then make sure the staff followed them. And if they wouldn't follow them, then you just found someone else that would follow them. And then you had good patient care. So you had to get to the root cause. So what is the cause of insulin resistance, which is type 2 diabetes? Well, you have, there's 3 things that I have found. If you address, you will reverse type 2 diabetes. Number 1, you have trillions of cells in your body, and around those cells, you have insulin receptors. And the insulin receptors are kind of like a door, and they open up. And the way it works is as the cell uses glucose, insulin opens the receptor, allows glucose in, and everybody's fine. The problem is in that receptor does not operate properly. And I found 3 things that causes that receptor to be resistant to the insulin. And so you just have to figure out, is that receptor insulin to one of those 3 things? The first item is if the cell gets too big, the insulin, the receptor won't open right. And it's kind of like in the wintertime when you can't open your window or you can't open the door because it has swollen, and so it just doesn't open too good. And so if the problem is it's too big, it's gotten too large, how do you fix it? Shrink it. Make it go back down to where it was before. Number 2 is if it's clogged with fat. And there's 3 major kinds of fat I have found that affects it. And Dr. Walter Kempner at Duke University, he found that if you will take that fat away, then the body will clean that receptor. And those 3 types of fats are oil. Do y'all fry food here? Do people fry food here? Do y'all have McDonald's with French fries? Do you have places with donuts? No?
We don't go to.
But I mean, is that in the community? That's in the community. Do people, I mean, where I live, they fry everything. I mean, we do. We fry. When I was in Africa and I told them that we fry ice cream, they could not believe it. But we fry ice cream. And if we don't fry it, we pour oil in it. And the South's tongues are used to a lot of oil. Or y'all would say oil. Thank you. My wife, she's from up near Canada, upper part of New York, and she tells me it's oil, and I say, not in my house, it's oil. I mean, it's oil. No, in my house, it's oil. But the oil will clog the receptor. Dairy is fat. It will clog the receptor. Meat is fat. It will clog the receptor. And so Dr. Kempner at Duke University found that if we stop using oil, if we stop using cheese or dairy, if we stop, milk, ice cream, butter, milkshake, whatever, it's all got fat in it, or meat, which is interesting. Did you know, can anybody tell me what food that is let's say, is beef clean meat? Yeah, it's clean meat. And I grew up on a cattle farm, so yeah, beef's clean meat. But can beef be an unclean meat? If what? If there's blood and if there's fat. Yeah, it's unclean. If it's got blood or if it has fat in it. And I can tell you, a steak that doesn't have blood in it, it just doesn't taste good. Now, no, I quit using meat at 17 years old at the stockyard that's a whole nother story, but I saw what was going on. I knew what was going on. We'd take cows to the stockyard, but one day I just had enough and I quit eating meat. But meat has blood and meat has fat, but fat is an issue that will clog the receptor. So Duke found that if you will stop the oil, if you stop the dairy, if you stop the meat, the receptor the body will clean it out. And that is so cool. Now, you have to have fats. You've got to have fats, proteins, carbohydrates, vitamins. Vitamins are the catalyst that kicks on fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. You've got to have minerals, which minerals are the catalyst that kicks on the fats, which kicks on the fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Very important to have all that. You got to have the fats. But what are some healthy fats you could have? Avocados. Can anybody tell me what the best brain food that's been identified is? Avocados. Avocados are great brain food. Olives. And so God put fats in foods that are healthy for us, that aren't going to mess us up if eaten in moderation. So number 2, to fix that receptor, we have to stop eating all oil, all dairy, and all meat. Now, I'm not saying stop eating oil forever, but let's fix this problem. The third issue is inflammation. Inflammation will cause the receptor not to work right. And according to Harvard, the number 1 cause of inflammation in America is processed foods. Sleep deprivation is huge in causing inflammation. Yes? It's, a lot. Well, we have to have inflammation because if you didn't have inflammation, you would not heal. You've got to have inflammation. But just as you have to have cholesterol, there can be too much. And so you can have too much inflammation. If you don't have inflammation, your wounds won't heal. You got to have some inflammation to work. And so our body has some inflammation, but it's too much is a problem. How did you get too much? It could be the diet can be processed. It could be the wheat can cause inflammation. Wheat, the American wheat, can cause it. It could be, you might be an issue with nightshades. Tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, peppers, lobelia. The herb lobelia is a nightshade. And so it can be the foods that you get. It can be, sleep deprivation. You're not getting enough sleep. Stress can cause inflammation. A lot of things can cause inflammation. You just want to you just want to take care of your body. So when I approach it in a two-step process. You're driving down the road, it's a Sunday afternoon, and you're going down the road and you see an old 1957 Chevy out there sitting in an old farm field. So you back up, drive up in the driveway. Little old lady comes to the door and she says, "What you need?" And you say, "Ma'am, that old car right there, what are you doing with that car?" She says, "Honey, if you'll take that thing away, you can have it." "Yes, ma'am, I'll take care of that." And you get your buddy with a rollback, come back there and get that old 1957 Chevy, and you take it home. It probably's not in good running order. So you have to what? Restore it. You got to take a grinder to it, and you got to grind off that rust. You got to sand it. You got to put Bondo. You got to put Tiger Paw. You got to sand it. You got to prime it. You got to paint it. You're probably going to have to change the tires. You're going to have to put new upholstery on the seats. You're going to have to maybe even rebuild the engine. It takes a lot of work to rebuild something, to restore something. It's kind of painful, grinding and all that kind of stuff. But once you're finished, it's got a new paint job. It's got new tires. It's got a new upholstery. That engine's rebuilt. Do you still take a grinder to it? No. You're going to change the oil every 3,000 miles. You're going to rotate the tires every 6,000 miles. You're going to wash it. You're going to maintain it. So that's the way I address when somebody comes to see me. At first, we're going to restore it. And restoring is sometimes a little tougher than maintenance. But we got to get through the restoring process to restore the body. And so how do we restore a person for diabetes? First, you got to shrink that cell. How do you shrink the cell? Come to ideal body weight. Now, ideal body weight, and I'm watching the time, how long it's been since I've eaten. But let's see. Let's say that here's the problem I run into. I don't know if you know these people, but we sit down, we take Mayo Clinic's BMI, body mass index, and so we look down the graph and see how tall they are, and we run across and we see, how much they weigh, and we go up and see what their body mass index is, and they go, "Well, I got big bones." Okay. I got this fella who used to come in to see me, and this guy was massive. This guy was like an Angus bull. I mean, he was just, and you go down and he was 60, he was in his mid-60s. He would break the Guinness Book of Records every year except every year at least once, if not multiple, and he was breaking his own records. This guy was just extremely strong. And you come across here, and I kept going across. I went off the chart. That guy was so heavy at his height, the BMI chart did not even have him on there. But if I walked up to him, and if I pinched him, it would like be pinching this piece of wood. Do you know how we used to pinch people with fat calipers? It wouldn't work on him. This guy was just... And so you might be that guy. And if you are, see, medicine uses BMI, body mass index. And that's where the majority of the research is in, is BMI. But if you go over to sports medicine, what do they use? Percent body fat. I personally like percent body fat. It's easier. Now, I think it's more accurate. It's easier just to look at a chart and run across. But there are some people, I don't know about the big bone thing, but that they're just a lot of muscle. And all you do is you go to the gym. They don't, the most accurate way is to put you in a cylinder and do fluid displacement. But it's very accurate today. We used to pinch people, but you don't pinch people no more. And so they have these things at the gym that you either stand on and it runs a current through you, or you hold and it will give you what your percent body fat is. And it's pretty accurate. And ask them, men have a lower percent body fat than women because we're built different. So whatever you do, whether you use BMI or percent body fat, you want to shrink that cell until you get to that number. Until you get to that number, you ain't fixed. You want to be in the green if you're using BMI, body mass index. You don't want to be out of the green, as the chart has it green. So it's just losing weight is what it is, coming to ideal body weight. The second one, oil. You just don't eat oil during that time that you're restoring. You don't eat any vegetable oil or any, y'all don't eat lard, but where I live, they eat lard. And you don't eat any dairy because that's got fat, and you don't eat any meat. And what happens? The body will clean that receptor out to where that receptor starts functioning again. And Dr. Kempner at Duke University found that out. And the next item is you want to get rid of inflammation. And one of the best things we do is we get people to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. We have them exercise. And we're putting them in a diet that is non-inflammatory foods. And guess what? The receptor starts working again. So how do we get there? There's 5 things that I use. Duke uses 4. I use 5. Number 1 is what? Prayer, trusting God. Duke doesn't use that one, but I use that one. You can go home to your wife tonight and say, honey, I ain't going to live again. God and I had a conversation. He's just going to take care of me. I'm never going to eat again. And God's going to say, listen, buddy, I gave you a brain and I gave you food. Now get eating. It's a combination. Yes, we sit down and ask God to bless that food. But God gave us a brain. He gave us the food. And we got to do our part. It's a partnership to be healthy. And there are people who believe literally in the Adventist church, and Mrs. White talked against it, that believe all you do is pray. You don't have to do anything else. And if you do anything else, it's lack of faith. And that is not true. That is not, that's false. So, prayer. Ask for God's healing. Yes, that's very important. But you have some responsibilities, and these are the 4 that Dr. Kempner found at Duke University. Number 1 is a diet, and it's a real simple diet. If you went to Duke, as Duke quit doing this program, they started it in Kempner started it in 33. Duke accepted it in 38, and it wasn't until just a few years ago that Duke stopped doing the program. When they stopped doing the program, they were charging $13,000 to do this. $13,000 on the first visit, and they didn't take insurance for it neither. Every quarter you had to come in and see them at $6,500. And you've got it in your kitchen. You've got all this at your house. It's simple. So here's what it is. For breakfast is 1 cup, well, let me back up, is 3 servings of fruit and 1 cup of brown rice. Now the fruit. If you have type 2 diabetes and bananas or grapes or something makes your blood sugar go up crazy, use horse sense. Y'all know what horse sense, common sense. Just don't do that yet. You're not ready for it yet. Stay on the fruit that you can do. You may be a person that is so sensitive that you can only do berries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, and do a half a cup as a serving of each. But most people can do more than that. They can do, some Granny Smith apple. They can do, some other fruits. In Africa, they do not like the idea of 3 fruits. They want more variety. So sometimes you got to negotiate with people. And so what we did is took a plate and just visualize this in your head. Visualize this. You take a plate and take some brown rice. Now, at Duke, they only gave you just brown rice. That's it, period. And they washed that rice several times before they even cooked it. But put some cilantro in it. Put some scallions in it. Put some turmeric in it. It's going to make it look pretty, and it's going to taste a little bit better. It's not going to hurt you near a bit. Take that brown rice and put it in a bowl, a 1 cup bowl. And then what we did in Africa is we take it and we put that 1 cup, and it just is plumb right in the middle of that plate. And they said, we need more variety. I said, okay. And so instead of 3 servings, a serving is each apple, orange, pear, or half a cup of blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, let's go to 6 half servings. We're still doing the same amount. We just got them a little more variety. It's like when I go to Africa, you are not going to have them skip a meal without avocados. I don't care what you say. They're going to eat avocados every meal. And so, okay, we'll work with you. So what they do is they put 6 half servings of fruit around the plate. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's got different colors. It's just beautiful around that. That's breakfast. The noon meal. The noon meal is a nice big old salad. You're going to put like cucumbers, broccoli, cauliflower, just a nice big old, like you went to the salad bar, nice big old raw salad. But you can't put dressing, oil, cheese, or dairy, or meat on there. Why? Why? But what's on there? What's in that? Fat. Yeah, you can't have the fat. And so Duke said, nope, no oil, no dressing, no dairy, no meat, because we got to clean the insulin receptor. The cure is in the cause. You got to get rid of the cause. And then no salt. You don't want salt. And the problem with salt, the problem with salt is not salt, I don't really believe. I think the problem with salt is that little girl with the umbrella. She'll kill you. The Celtic salt, the Himalayan salt, in a little moderation, I don't see the negative outcomes that I see with the little girl with the umbrella. She's the problem that people are pouring on their food. And people go, oh, it's the iodine. No, it's not the iodine. You need the iodine. The average Japanese woman consumes 13.7 milligrams of iodine. The average American woman consumes 0.13. I missed it out of my head now. But anyway, less than 1%, 0.125 milligrams of iodine. You need iodine for thyroid function. You need iodine for brain function. You need iodine for immune system. Girls in childbearing age, they need iodine. Did you know if a girl will take 12.5 milligrams during, especially the first 2 months, she needs it during the first 2 trimesters. But research out of North Carolina, and now it's being double studied out, and now it's being replicated in Germany. They found that if you do 12.5 milligrams during pregnancy, and then when the baby's born, you go to 25 milligrams. And if the baby, when it can start chewing, does 3.125 milligrams, the studies are showing the baby's IQ is 10 to 15 points above the mother's IQ. Is that not exciting? Yeah. That's exciting. Also, iodine significantly reduces a lady's risk of breast cancer and tender breast syndrome. Yes?
How do you get the iodine if you're not eating the little girl?
So you can do what the Japanese ladies do. A mess. Y'all know what a mess is? A lot of. They eat a mess of sea vegetables. But you can get it in just like Ithroid, Iodoral, Lugotab. It's just an iodine tablet that has 12.5 milligrams of iodine. 12.5. So on this salad, you can squeeze lemon juice. It's what Duke could do. But sometimes you got to negotiate. I can get women to go along with that lemon juice, but men have a hard time with it. And so the way I've gotten the men to go with it is salsa, a low-sodium salsa. Just put your salsa on there, and it tastes good, unless you have problems with nightshades. And then 1 cup of brown rice. And that is the protein that Kempner used, was the brown rice. And then nothing for supper. Now, when I went to the clinic where I worked, again, I'd gone from a place for 20 years in regular health care where we didn't reverse diabetes. We masked and managed it. That was our plan of care, masking and managing with pharmaceutical. So I go to the clinic, which has excellent outcome indicators. We were running over a 98% reversal rate of type 2 diabetes. Over 98% reversal of type 2 diabetes. And I get there and I notice that they're only giving breakfast and the noon meal, which I call dinner, to the people. So I go in, I'm the director, I go in and talk to the physicians and I say, you got to serve breakfast, mid-morning snack, you got to serve dinner, afternoon snack, supper, and HS snack, hour of sleep. And they decided to play with me. And they asked me, why? And I said, it's a standard of practice. It's what the American Dietetic Association says to do. And I truly believe this. You know, even though the numbers are right there facing me right in the face, I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. We're so brainwashed. And so they said, how many diabetics you reverse where you come from? I walked out. You know, they asked me why. I said, the standard, the standard practice, the American Dietetic Association. It still wasn't working yet. And then that made sense when they asked me that question. So then I went back to the office and I called my very dear friend, Agatha Thrash. And I said, Dr. Agatha, I know the numbers are right. They're working, but this is scary, And she just started laughing. And she said, Brother Walt, that's how you reverse diabetes, is you only feed them breakfast and dinner. You don't give them snacks and you don't give them supper. That's how you reverse type 2 diabetes. And that's what we did. And so we do what do we do for breakfast? 3 fruits, 3 servings of fruit, and 1 cup of brown rice. For dinner, we did big salad. What was on it? What could they put on it? Lemon juice or salsa. And what else? 1 cup of brown rice. That's it. In Africa, you better say yes. They're going to. And I didn't see any bad outcomes of it. Yes. If you don't want to, don't do it. Now the question is mixing fruits and vegetables, because that's what you're doing, right? Yes.
Do we have those who have comments or questions use the mic?
Oh, if you have a comment or question, if y'all can use the mic, because the folks out in TV land can't hear us. So there's a question on mixing fruits and vegetables. So I asked Dr. Agatha, what's the problem with mixing fruits and vegetables? She says it makes a tornado in your stomach. Well, inspiration talks about it. Don't mix the fruits and vegetables. And so what's happening is the fruits are digesting first, and the vegetables, and the fruits then they start some decomposing that can cause problems. So I asked Dr. Agatha one time, I said, can you do it with juice? Can you mix them? And what I liked about her is she'd train you. She's a teacher. And she said, well, what's the problem with it? So I told her. She said, so does that happen with juice? No. When you eat food, it's going to take 2.5 hours to 5 hours to digest out of the stomach. When you drink a juice and you pull that fiber out, it's going to be through the system in 15 to 20 minutes. There's not time for that breaking down and causing the tornado in the stomach. So you can mix fruits and vegetables and juices, and it's not a problem at all. So that's what we did for food. Then, what's the next? So we got N-E. See where I'm going? Use that tool that we talked about this morning. You may say that's old-fashioned. You may say your great-grandmother told you that. But that tool is what works. So E stands for what? Exercise. There's a question in the back.
The question was asked, what about smoothies when you're not removing the fiber?
Just like eating food.
Okay.
Yes. Did you have a question? Okay.
This was more appropriate 10 minutes ago, but what about the 400-pounder who does not have diabetes?
Okay, if he doesn't he can still do this.
But why doesn't he have diabetes? He should have diabetes.
It just doesn't, it's not doing it for him. I can't answer that, I don't know. He's blessed and he doesn't have it yet. But he can still do this to lose the weight. I met a lady at Duke that did not have diabetes, and she lost 200 pounds doing this program. I had a guy come in this week. And he comes in the store and he says, "Do you recognize me?" I said, "No, sir, I don't." He said, "I was here Halloween." "No, sir, I don't recognize you." He says, "Well, I was 147 pounds more than I am right now." "What'd you do?" He said, "What you told me to do." He did this right here. So what did I do? I went back to the stock room. I got Walter, my son. I got another one of my firefighters that was there visiting. We went back to the stock room. We got 3 50-pound bags of grain. I carried it out there and I said, "Hold your arms out." He held his arms out. I stuck a 50-pound bag. I stuck a second 50-pound bag. I stuck a third 50-pound bag of wheat on him. And he's doing this. I said, "This is what you just lost." He says, "Are you serious? How much did you lose?" And I'm still letting him hold it. he's ready to get rid of it. He said, "I lost 147 pounds. I said, "This is what you just lost." He goes, "I can't believe it." Well, we took him off. And he said, "That's why my feet aren't hurting no more." I said, "You're right." I said, "Your knees probably ain't hurting no more either." Sometimes you just got to do some reality orientation here on what was really going on. So, yes, they may not have it, and the word is yet. But why that is, I can't answer that question. So, E is exercise. So what Kempner found is when Kempner started looking at exercise, he assessed. This guy was brilliant. He was a medical doctor, but also he had a PhD, and I believe it was biochemistry. And I think that's what made the difference. And Kempner looked at little humans and he looked at big humans, and he found that little humans were exercising 4 times a day. They had recess in the morning, they had recess after dinner, they had recess in the afternoon, they went home, they played, and they had chores. And then he then did that to bigger humans, adults. And he started having the adults exercise 4 times a day. And the improvement in the diseases that he was treating significantly improved. Why? Let's go back to what we learned this morning. Where do we go to find true physiology? The Bible or inspiration? In inspiration, it says, true health is perfect circulation. Yes, true health is perfect circulation. So Kempner found at Duke University that if he exercised the adults 4 times a day, the diseases improved so much faster. I would notice when I worked up at the clinic that I would sit down with folks at 6 in the morning and I would check their blood sugar when they would come in with diabetes. And let's say that your blood sugar was 170, 180, 190. I'd have you go do a power walk for 30 minutes and come back. Then I would notice your blood sugar was around 110, 120, somewhere in there. And then we based that day off of that every day. So I mentioned this to a fella who was at Loma Linda, that was a staff there at Loma Linda, and he said, that's interesting. And I saw him 2 years later, and he said, well, you know what you told me 2 years ago? He said, we did some research on that at Loma Linda. And we found a 20-minute power walk lowers blood sugar more than one shot of insulin. That's significant. So here, this genius over at Duke, Dr. Kempner, was exercising people 4 times a day. Why was his diabetics doing better? It was like they were taking 4 shots of insulin a day. We have a question here. Oh, where's that mic? Okay. Oh, we got a question back here first.
Yes, I have 2 questions. How long do you have to do this diet?
How old do you have to be?
How long do you have to?
Oh, how long? I'll get to that.
Okay.
That's a very good question.
And then the second question I had is, what if you are your ideal weight, but you haven't lost your stomach?
Okay, good question. I'll get to that one too.
How long the exercise has to be?
Oh, how long does the exercise have to be? It depends on the person. If I can get you to walk 20 minutes 4 times a day, that's my goal. But there are people who can't do that. That's not reasonable and obtainable. 23 years ago, my dad had a quadruple bypass. And we were talking, and we could talk every night to see how he was doing. I was living in Virginia. And he said, one night, my cardiologist is giving me a hard time. His math cardiologist. He's giving me a hard time. He tells me I need to walk around the block. And I can't do it. I said, yeah, you can. He says, no, I can't. I said, now I couldn't say, yes, you can. I had said, yes, sir. I said, yes, sir, you can. You understand the difference there? I said, yes, sir, you can. He goes, son, you don't understand. I cannot do it. I said, yes, sir, you can do it. He goes, how? I said, okay. Can you walk from the family room and where you're sitting in your recliner out to the mailbox and back? He said, I can do that. That's all you need to do. That's all you need to do. So he did that for a couple of days. I said, Dad, how's it doing? I can do that. Good. Can you walk over to the neighbor's mailbox? Now, he lived in a subdivision. And that neighbor's mailbox was from here to the door. I said, can you tomorrow walk to the neighbor's mailbox and back? I think I can. Okay. He did it. And we'd have this conversation night after night after night. And every couple of days, in 1 month, Dad had walked halfway around the block. Oh, he's so excited. He said, I'm halfway there. I walked halfway around the block. I said, Dad, do you realize what you did? Mom would get in the car and she'd follow him, just make sure he didn't have an acute episode. I said, Dad, you walked half around the block and then you walked back around that way. I said, Dad, tomorrow just keep on going the other way. He walked around the block. Do you see how it works? So I tell people, just give me 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 4 times a day. Week 1. Week 2, if you can go to 10 minutes, go to 10 minutes. And as I'm working with them, just keep increasing as you can. My goal is 20 minutes. I had someone this week that came in and they said, I can't do 5 minutes. I said, can you do 3 minutes? I don't know. I said, can you do 1 minute? I can do 1 minute. We'll start with 1 minute. I'll take 1 minute, I told them, 4 times a day. And that person said, it'd take me about a minute to walk out to the mailbox and back. And I thought, I remember Dad's story. I said, I'm good with that. We'll start with that. So when I get back next week, we'll continue working. Do you see how it works? The goal is 20 minutes. I like the Loma Linda number. 20 minutes, 4 times a day. If you want to do 30 minutes, if you want to do an hour, Kempner at Duke, he'd do an hour 4 times a day. But that is not reasonable and obtainable to most people. You got work to do. And I believe in working. Or you just can't do that. At Kempner, he didn't make them work a full hour, but they went to the gym for 1 hour and they did as much as they could, up and down for 1 hour. But that just doesn't work usually for folks at home. But the goal is to get to 20 minutes. So N-E, what's the next one? W. Okay, W. So water. Water's big. You need, did we talk about water last night? Okay. So with water, University of California at Davis found that a 5-year-old needs a half a gallon of water a day, 64 ounces, 4 water bottles, 2 liters to run a 5-year-old. Most of us are bigger than when we were 5 years old. So from 5 years old up to 128 pounds is what you need to sit on the couch. But if you're more active, you need more. State of Tennessee tells me I have to drink a gallon of water a day. Why? I'm a fireman. Firemen are to drink in the state of Tennessee a gallon of water a day, prevention in case we have a house fire. If we have a house fire, we're going to drink more in rehab. So depending on your activity, if you're less than 128 pounds, another pint, another quart, whatever you need. If you're working in the garden, you're exercising, whatever. But if you're over 128 pounds, and yes, you can be super, super big, and there's another calculation, but most people aren't there. So if you're over 128 pounds, it's body weight divided by 2, that many ounces. So let's say you weigh 200 pounds. So 200 pounds divided by 2 is what? It's 100 ounces to sit on the couch. But if you're more active than that, hopefully so, then if you're exercising, working in the garden, then you need more than that. There is. But what they found out, we still need the water. We still need the water. But then there's another thing. That there's a guy that was friends with Einstein. This guy was another PhD physicist. And he found that when you drink more than 2 to 3 ounces of water at a given time, you have free flow. And coming back to what she had just said, water's in our food. And that's what we were told for years. Water's in our food, so you don't have to worry about it. But today, that's what I'm reading when I'm reading from major literature now talking about how much water we need. They're now saying, yes, we need the body weight divided by 2 ounces. But what this guy who was friends with Einstein found is that if we drink more than 2 to 3 ounces of water at a given time, it goes to free flow. That's the physiological term called free flow. And we just urinate it out. So I mentioned earlier today, I'm back into school, and I took a course maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. And this whole course was on lab results, taking labs and that kind of thing. And so we measured a number of things every day, and one of them was our hydration. Everybody in the course, the class. And there's probably 35, 36 in the class that was taking that class. And so the professor had us week 1 just measure. We measured our labs 4 times a day, 7 days a week. Everybody that first week was dehydrated. Everybody. The second week, the professor said, take body weight divided by 2. And if you're active, do more than that. And we did that for a week. Every day, 7 days a week, 7 days that week, 4 times a day. Everybody, no, I'm taking it back. Most everybody was dehydrated that day, that week. The third week, the professor told us about this physicist friend of Einstein and told us the theory about free flow. Well, I'd heard about that years ago in physiology. But sometimes you hear something for the first time and it's like, bing, the light comes on. It's like when you read something in the Bible and you've read that text however many times and boom, it comes on. You go, wow, I didn't see that before. Well, what this guy said was, this physicist, he said, every half hour, just take a swig of water 3 to 4 times. If you're smaller, 3. If you're bigger, 4. Except, get this, y'all, 15 minutes before, while you eat, to an hour after you eat. Ever heard that before? So we did that that third week. Everybody in class, we swigged on that water 3 to 4 times every half hour based on our body size, except 15 minutes before we eat, while we ate, to an hour after we ate. 4 times a day for the whole week. All of us were hydrated that week. Isn't it amazing? I mean, you can't argue with science. I mean, that's science. We were doing lab work 4 times a day measuring that. And so all you're doing is you're coming over and you're just doing this. That much, 3 to 4 times every half hour. Who's ever grown tomatoes? It's kind of like pouring a 5-gallon bucket of water on a tomato plant. What's going to happen? It's going to run off. But if you have a drip line, it's going to keep them soaked. And that's what that physicist found, is if we'll just do that 3 to 4 times every half hour, we'll drip line and have adequate hydration. N-E-W, what's the next one? What? S, what's that stand for? What? Sunshine. Did we get that with exercising? Yep, we already got that one. Yes, sir.
Is there a benefit to the free flow you talked about? Seems like there might be a benefit to just chugging once in a while.
Benefits of chugging once in a while. Thank you, there is. First thing in the morning. First thing in the morning, Miss White said you should drink, a big old glass of lemon water, warm. That warm water is going to stimulate peristalsis. The volume of water is going to cause free flow and flush your urinary tract. The lemon, it's antiviral. It's got all kinds of good properties. So yes, first thing in the morning, you want to chug it. And you want to get free flow, but you can't count that water that you just drank then. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes?
You were saying drink the water 3 to 4 times every half hour. Did you mean half hour or every hour?
Half hour.
Okay. Just clarifying.
Question back over here.
How were you assessing hydration versus dehydration in your class?
So there were several ways we were doing it. We were looking at conductivity. You're familiar with conductivity? And so we were measuring conductivity. Let's go back to chemistry class. So remember when the professor went and took a flask, and he took and plugged in a light bulb, and the neutral was solid, but the 2 hot wires were in the flask. The light didn't come on. Then he poured distilled water in there, and the light wouldn't come on. Then he started pouring salt in there, and now the salinity came up, and the light, you had mineralization, therefore the electrons could flow from one wire to the other wire, and the light got brighter and brighter the higher the salinity. And then the professor went and took distilled water again and started pouring in there, and now the salinity went down, and the light got less bright. And so when you measure the salinity, it will tell you where there's 2 things. High salinity can either be too much mineralization, salt, or it can be dehydration. And if you're not doing the salt and that's controlled, then it's going to be the hydration. And we found as we increase that hydration, that salinity, the conductivity came down. As we didn't drink the water, conductivity would go back up. And so we measured it by measuring conductivity. There's a question here. If you drink too much water, conductivity is going to be too low. Or if you don't have enough mineralization, conductivity is too low. And many times when conductivity is high, you're dealing with hypertension or cardiovascular issues.
I heard that too much drinking water is bad for our...
It is. Bad for what?
Bad for our body system.
Absolutely.
So how much is the too much?
Okay.
And then also exercise question. For doing the every 4 times a day instead of 1 time with the long exercise? What's the difference?
What Duke found was people did better with doing it 4 times a day. Now, nothing is 100% in health. It's not a cookie cutter. And so you have to look at each individual person and measure the outcomes. And so you have to look at that person and say, which does that person more benefit? And so you may say, you need to take Benadryl to fall asleep. And if you take Benadryl, it doesn't do a thing for you. It wakes you up. My granddad would drink coffee to go to sleep. My father would drink coffee to stay awake. I don't care if you're on which coffee is a phytochemical. It's got the caffeine in it. But versus your medical side, there's no constant there. And so you've got to, everybody's individual. And you have to, so I'm speaking general today.
What about your protein in your fruits and your vegetables and your rice?
Good question. Duke found that there's adequate protein over all those years from Kempner's research from 33 all the way up into 2000 some. Did not have any problem. And when you go to Duke, and when I went there to audit their program, they took labs a lot. And they monitored all kinds of labs, and protein was one. And they just didn't have a problem with the protein. What we're more concerned with the protein is the digestive process. I have a friend, she's a nurse, and to make extra money, she would go out to businesses and places and draw labs to make extra money and then help people out. So she went to this one group and took their labs, and the labs came back that their protein was low. So as a good nurse, she went and sat down with each individual person and said, tell me, what do you eat? And they had adequate protein in what they reported, every single one. So she went to a friend of mine, a mutual friend who's a physician out in West Tennessee. It's where it happened. And so he got involved, and they started studying what's going on. So he comes and starts talking to the people and assessing and figuring out, what's going on. And people say, do away with physicians. No, don't do away with physicians. They got a lot of training in how to look at things. And he looked at more than just the nutrition. He looked at the whole. And as he did a history on every single one of them, he found that they were a kind of a person that we were talking about today that, have you ever met somebody that they find fault with everything? Well, these people are that kind of people. They were worried about what you did and what you did and what you did, and they were just very critical people. And they actually belonged to a church. I won't tell you what church it was. And what happens with that is when we're critical and we're upset, cortisol goes up, adrenaline goes up, fight or flight happens. There's all kinds of things that goes up, blood clotting, pulse, glucose can go up, communication to nerves, communication to muscles. But what turns off? Digestion. Also, immune system can shut down too. But digestion shuts down. And what can happen is as that person is eating that nice big old meal, but when they're all tore up, because they're just worrying about everything and critical about everything, they're not breaking macronutrients down to micronutrients. That has to be small enough to go into those little screens in the villi. And so it just goes right out the feces, and they weren't breaking those proteins down because this was always going. They're always just tore up about something, stressed about something. And so you can have adequate protein in just whatever, eating meat or whatever. But if you are stressed, that can affect it. But yes, Duke did find in their research of monitoring proteins constantly that there was plenty of protein in that diet. Yes.
I was just wondering, because there's been some pros and cons as far as brown rice and white
Arsenic.
rice, and what type of rice?
Oh, which one to use?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kempner started with white rice and sugar. It didn't work out good for him. So then he dumped the sugar, and then he found out he stayed with the white rice. Then he tried brown rice and had much superior outcomes. And so Duke stayed on the white rice from that, brown rice from that point forward. Yes. Hang on just a sec. Come on.
Take crystal of healthy salt with water for mineral content.
So his question was, what if you do, how many of y'all watch Barber? Barber's great. And Barber talks about putting some Celtic salt in your water. That's fine. It's minerals. How many of y'all knew Cherney? How many of y'all know Harold Cherney? Harold Cherney, he was one of the co-guys that I talked about last night on the book. Yeah, what? Natural Remedies Encyclopedia. Yes, thank you. And I asked Cherney that question one day about doing mineralization with your water, because Cherney was big into distilled water. And I said, Cherney, aren't you missing your and I'm not answering this question because I'm not a biochemist. I really wish I could say definitively why, but this was Cherney's response. And Cherney said, I said, Cherney, aren't you missing your mineralization in your distilled water? He said, Walt, when do you drink? Do you drink with meals? No, sir. He says, your body does best absorbing mineralization during meals, not between meals. So it's better to get our minerals in the food. Now, how do we get minerals in our food? University of North Carolina Department of Agriculture found that when we use heirloom seeds, and then they went and planted hybrid seeds, the hybrid seeds uptook, on average, 40% of the nutrients out of the same amended soil as the heirloom. 40% of the nutrients that heirloom took out. So heirloom took out this much, hybrid took out only 40% as much. 40 cents on a dollar. Heirloom's better. Hybrid took up 40 cents on a dollar of the nutrients out of the soil that the hybrid took. Then there's another thing, and I learned this in one of my other courses I took on nutrition recently. The U.S. government in 1903 started spraying our food with a byproduct of pharmaceuticals to try to increase the shelf life. And it was somewhat working. But you were getting the pharmaceuticals on that food to get higher shelf life. And so, why do they want a longer shelf life? So they can ship it from California to Tennessee, Chile, to New York or Maine. And also, well, I won't get into that. So they found if they hybridize it, they can get rid of that chemical in there that's causing it to rot faster. Well, guess what they've now found? Guess what that chemical was? That those chemicals that they hybridized out. And actually, it wasn't rotting. The chemicals that were in there that they hybridized out were amylase, protease, and lipase. It wasn't rotting, it was digesting. So God put in our food digestive enzymes to aid with digestion. Now, when Adam and Eve in the garden, they'd walk up to whatever, and they didn't have beans because that didn't come until after the fall. But they had other stuff. And when they go pick the other stuff, did they put it up? Did they can it? Did they freeze it? Did they? No. Dehydrate? No, they ate it right then. That's the way God intended for us to eat it vine ripe and eat it now. Because of sin, that's not always possible anymore. So we do have to put our food up. But when you put it up, you want it to be vine ripe, one, not picked when the tomato's green, which that's what they do often. But you also want those enzymes in it to aid with digestion. And what this course showed us was that the organs in the body that produce enzymes are now overworking, and now they've identified because those organs are overworking, we're seeing organ failure problems. And so if we would eat heirloom food, we should have adequate enzymes to then have adequate digestion without overworking the organs. We had a question over here.
So
Yes.
does that mean that the heirloom fruit is something that we shouldn't ship from one place to another because it's going to change? In other words, eat what is in your area?
Eat what's in your backyard's best. Grow your own food. You know what the soil amendment is. You know what seeds you're using. You can then save those seeds. We had a very good discussion at dinner today at the table talking about, do you believe we're in the end times? Are we going to have an issue with buying and selling? You better have seeds that you can plant yourself and where you can grow your own food. And then, yes, there is times that, yes, you might not be able to grow pineapples here. But the majority of food, yes, eat it local that you can grow best in your own yard.
So, I lost my thought on that.
We'll grab it when it comes back.
Sorry.
No problem, sorry. So, S was what? Sunshine. So we get sunshine with exercise. Exercise physiologists for years have told us, and it's not just one, as we read exercise physiology, there are books on exercise physiology about exercising inside versus outside. I keep hearing them say, it's 10 times better to exercise outside than inside. Why? Sunshine, fresh air, the green grass, the blue sky, watching squirrels and birds. And this morning we were enjoying watching the red-headed woodpecker and the other birds at the bird feeder. Nature's important for us. Nutrition, exercise. Yeah, is there another question? Okay, there's one back here and one here.
I'm getting the E part.
You're getting yours in, aren't you?
What about here in Oregon? Like, I came from San Diego, but here in Oregon for at least 4 to 6 months, if you exercise outside and it's always cloudy and dark, are you getting enough sunshine?
You may not. A good question. Or what about the people in LA? Well, I can't exercise outside because it's pollution. Well, you shouldn't be living in LA. You live in the country where there's not the pollution. But yes, when I go to Canada and speak in Canada, that's a big question they have. What about SAD, seasonal affective disorder? And what do you do for that? If you choose to live there, then you're going to have to figure out something. And Neil Nedley has a product. It's a full spectrum light that you can put, and when you're reading, and you can put, they even make full spectrum lights you can put up. You need that full spectrum light. And so you can make up somewhat with that light. Yes. Was there another question over here? So as we look, let's go back to exercise. So when you exercise, you want that. Well, remind me on exercise and cardiology, because when we get to cardiology, because it's better explained there. So in nutrition, what's the next one? Exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, making the right decisions. Are you making the right decisions? And again, it's not just alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. Are you making the decisions on diet? Now, let's jump up a couple stories in elevation. Y'all remember Billy Graham? There's a Billy Graham radio station in Black Mountain, North Carolina. And I used to listen to that. I don't anymore. I don't like the music. But they used to have really good music like George Beverly Shea. You know, that's good music. But they've come to this new stuff, and I don't care for it. And but years ago, I was listening to this old Baptist preacher one night, driving home from work. And he was talking about fasting in the Bible. Now, does the Bible talk about fasting? Jesus says, when you fast. Not if you fast. He says, when you fast. So, does that mean we should be doing it? Yes. And there's different kinds of fast in the Bible. There's water fast. There's dry fast. Esther did a dry fast in the folks then for 3 days. But when he was talking about the spiritual benefits, the physiological benefits, and then he said something that just that makes sense. Who works in healthcare? Who's taking anatomy and physiology? Do y'all remember the no muscle? The no muscle. Remember how in anatomy and physiology, when we were in anatomy, we went and identified all those where the pins were and all that? There's a no muscle. They missed it in school. They ain't found it yet. But it's in the Bible. There's a no muscle in the Bible. Let's go back. Eve, yes, she wanted to be like God, but what was presented before her? Appetite. Now, Adam didn't have a problem with appetite. Adam had a problem. He loved his wife more than he loved God. He committed suicide, Mrs. White said. He made a conscious decision to choose his wife because he knew she was going to die, and he couldn't live without her. Did it work? Did it work? Did that temptation work? It did work. Satan put a temptation in front of Adam. He chose his wife over Christ. Did it work? Because he loved her so much. You think you got a good romantic thing going? Adam and Eve had the best romance ever. There was no sin. I mean, the best romance. And it was so good that he chose her over God. Now, when Satan does things, he goes, that worked. Let me do it again sometime. Well, he actually did it at Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot's wife died, according to Ellen White, because Lot tarried. Is that not what it says? It does say that. If he'd gotten up, let's get out of here, she would have lived. But he tarried. Why? The kids. The kids. They didn't want to let their kids leave and their kids get burned up. They tarried. Kept waiting on their kids and whatever. And finally, the angels had to take them out by their hand. Now, you don't want to hear what I have to say right now. But I believe it's a valid question. And why we don't talk about it, I don't know. Maybe it's just not politically correct. Could Satan use that same temptation in the end? Could we tarry because we don't want to leave the kids when we have to flee? Could we tarry because we don't want to leave our spouse? I ain't going no further, but just think about it. It worked for Adam and Eve, or for Adam, and it took him out. It was working on Lot and his wife, but the angels drug him out. I don't know if the angel's going to drag us out this time. How do we prepare for that? I'm a firefighter. You got to prepare for things. Like I said, it's not a comfortable question, but it's a real one. So Eve, there was an appetite issue. Did Esau have an appetite issue? He sold his birthright for appetite. Did the children of Israel have an appetite issue in the desert? They asked for the flesh pots of Egypt. Was appetite a temptation for Shadrach and Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel? Was it a temptation? It was a temptation put before them, but they did not fail. They overcame the king's food. They were told they had to eat the king's food. That was a temptation. A temptation is not sin. If you do it, it's a sin. They were given the temptation, but they overcame. Was Christ tempted by Satan on appetite? The very first thing at the end of the 40 days. Do what? Turn the what? The rocks into bread. Mrs. White says, if we can overcome temptation, we can overcome any other temptation. Mrs. White says that temptation is Satan's ultimate weapon. Appetite. I'm sorry, what did I say? Thank you. Appetite. Thank you for. Usually Mary Lou's with me and she'll correct me on something like that. She says appetite is Satan's ultimate weapon. So let's go back to that no muscle. Every time you fast, you're saying no to appetite. Yes? So the more you work out with barbells, do the muscles get bigger? They get stronger? The more you throw those bales of hay when we were kids. Why didn't they have round bales when we were kids? I mean, you know, they're so lucky today. But we were strong as kids because we threw hay. The more we say no to appetite, the more we build the no muscle in our brain. The muscle that says no to temptation. And the Bible talks about the ability, to say no to sin. So as we fast, we can then have the strength to overcome other temptations. It's powerful. It really is. Nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, fresh air. So are we getting fresh air when we're exercising? Okay, good. So, nutrition, exercise, water. Can you tell I teach in the school system? So, nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, temperance, fresh air, rest. At Duke, they put them to bed at night at 9 o'clock. Go to bed at 9 o'clock. When we were in school, we did not know. When you go back and in your mind's eye, look at the chart of the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system has more tubing, if you won't call it tubing, plumbing, than our vascular system. Twice as much, we're told. But when you look at your mind's eye at that chart in anatomy, the brain was white. There was no lymphatic vessels. But guess what? They found them now. It's called the glymphatic system. And they find if we go to bed around 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, the brain does a deep clean. From 10 o'clock to midnight, it does a thorough clean and flushing. But to get the full benefit of that, you've got to be asleep. At first, they thought the only way was sleep. But now they found there's another thing that can cause it to work. Not as well, but it aids in the full process of it. What do you think it is? What makes the lymphatic system work? Exercise. Exercise also makes the glymphatic system in the brain work. And so through exercise, being in bed by 9 o'clock, it makes the brain work a lot better. But there's so many benefits that from sleep. We'll talk about some in cardiovascular. So Kempner would have the folks go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. And the one I use is trust in God. And we mentioned that at the very beginning. If you do those, we find that the majority of the diabetics reverse, over 98%. Now, the question you had is how long? How long do you do it? Or let's say the person is in ideal body weight, but their belly's sitting out a little bit. Well, the question is, why is their belly sitting out a little bit? Let's find out what's going on there. Why is it? Let's see what we can do to get that belly back down where it belongs. But when you look at BMI, body mass index, there's a huge range of numbers. But from here to here, most people say, oh, this is ideal body weight because they don't want to get down to here. They only want to lose to here. Well, you want to drop down, not at your highest of here. You want to drop down somewhere in here, because both Duke University and Dr. Thrash would say you don't want to be right on the edge, because you're one birthday, one Thanksgiving, one Christmas, one cruise from jumping into overweight. So be down a little bit. So when you do have a little bit extra to eat, you're still in ideal body weight. But come on, you want to come until you're at ideal body weight. And it may be a little more to get that belly down, or find out root cause, what's causing that belly to be a little bit bigger. But usually when people look at ideal body weight, they're only looking at here, but you got a long ways to go before you're down here and you're still in ideal body weight down here. So you might be able still to lose, and when you get into here, that belly's gone. So you stay on the program until you're at ideal body weight, whether you're doing BMI or percent body fat. You have an A1C of 5.6 or less. You have a glucose of 99 or less, and you're not taking any medications. Now then the next question is, how do you cut back on the medications? If you know sliding scale, it's going to be easy because you know how to cut back. But it's still very, very easy. All you do is you chart it. You keep track of these numbers. It's kind of like a if you're charting a patient, I can't remember what we called it, but you got your indicators here and you're charting over here what they're doing on their daily activities. So you're charting that weight every day. You're charting that morning fasting every day. You're charting that you're not going to chart your A1C because that's every 3 months. But you're charting those numbers. You chart, you measure, you chart what your medications are. And when that morning fasting comes down, and it's now, say, around 98 or 95, call your doc or your healthcare provider and say, listen, I'm doing Duke's program. I'm changed my diet, I'm exercising, and my morning fasting is at 95. What do you want me to do? Get them to help you cut back. And as they keep cutting back, because if you don't, you'll keep going down, and those meds will push you too low. And so work with your healthcare provider on cutting back on those, and they'll be glad to do that. That's how you do type 2. Type 1. Type 1's a whole different animal. You're dealing with the pancreas. I like looking at what's that C-peptide. But there's a honeymoon phase that, who knew Milton Crane? Anybody know Milton Crane? He was at Loma Linda as a researcher, as a medical doctor. He went to Weimar as a researcher. And Crane told me that you can reverse type 1 if you catch it in the honeymoon period. The honeymoon period seems to adjust some, but Crane said if you can catch it in the first 6 to 8 months, that he had benefits reversing type 1. The problem is most parents aren't monitoring their kids today. A lot of parents don't raise their kids anymore. The school system raises their kids. Babysitters raise the kids. Television raises the kids. Computer raises the kids. And the parents just aren't paying attention until finally you're out of the honeymoon period with some really major problems, or almost at the end of it. But if he could, here's what Crane did at Loma Linda. Crane found the number one cause of type 1 diabetes. T. Colin Campbell at Cornell found the number one cause of type 1 diabetes. Cambridge University found the number one cause of type 1 diabetes was dairy. Campbell found at Cornell that dairy was the most significant chemical carcinogen ever discovered. Blew me away. growing up on a dairy farm, and that's what our family produced, the most significant chemical carcinogen ever discovered. At Cornell, they would turn on cancer, turn off cancer, turn on cancer, turn off cancer in their nutrition department by giving dairy, taking away dairy, giving dairy, taking away dairy. Cheese, ice cream, milkshake, milk, butter, yogurt. It's all dairy. So Crane would take away the dairy, which he found to be the number one cause. He then would give them niacinamide. And you can do the research, go to NIH and look up type 1 diabetes, niacinamide, type 1 diabetes niacinamide study. And it will take you and show you the study, and it will tell you how much milligrams to use per kilogram of weight. And it's really not heavy. It's not a heavy dose at all. It's very low. It's not even normal therapeutic dose. And found it to be beneficial. The other thing that Crane did that's totally not what we would do is he would have them exercise real aggressively after eating. And we normally don't do that for reasons that we understand. But he found he could at times reverse type 1 diabetes. I just don't get the opportunity to work with people in the honeymoon period to really get to test that. So people who do come to me with type 1 diabetes, and I have quite a few, I just do the same thing as type 2. When they come as type 1, I still do the same thing as type 2. And what happens in the restoring process, it is not uncommon to see 60 to 80 units come down to 5, 10 units of insulin a day. And so from 60 to 80 units of insulin down to 5 or 10 units of insulin. That's not getting rid of it. It's not going away, but it's a whole lot better than a whole mess of it. But I found that to be beneficial. Any questions on diabetes? Yes.
My husband's had, like a lollipop. My husband's had diabetes since he was 31, type 2. And he was on metformin all that time. And now we have him off of the metformin. He's been using berberine.
Yes, what?
He's off of the metformin for over a year now using berberine.
Good. Berberine's good.
Okay.
And my doctor had me exercise 5 days a week.
There you go. Yeah. So berberine is used.
Yeah, and she's a vegan, so haven't eaten meat for 8 years.
And so you're on no medication?
No medication. I still take but my blood, it will go up if I take the berberine.
Yep.
If I take the berberine,
berberine is a great product. Yeah.
And I noticed that exercising, my doctor told me
Yes.
to do.
As we mentioned last night, Genema silvestri, fenugreek, cedarberry, blueberry, basil, holy basil, and there's others. But berberine's kind of a very popular one today. Okay, hang on just a sec. We'll come back. So you can have a microphone. Go ahead.
I have a granddaughter who is about 13 now, but when she was about 6 or 7, she was diagnosed with type 1. And they said that her pancreas basically was not producing any insulin at all.
Right.
And I'm wondering, from what you said, dairy, if she was given, that was part of their diet, just cow's milk.
And I have people who come in as type 1 and never did dairy. And so it's not only dairy, it's just the major cause. But it could be, yes, could be the issue.
Otherwise, what do you think would have caused that in a
Was she doing dairy then?
6-year-old? Pardon?
Was she doing dairy?
Well, I would imagine that's
Then
what her
that
mother
could-
gave her.
According to Dr. Crane and Dr. T. Colin Campbell, that could have been the cause.
So if she were to be taken off dairy now,
She's out of her honeymoon period. It still is good because actually at Cornell, they told us that dairy increases a child's risk of type 1 diabetes 1,100%. Here's a question here.
Well, that was the source, berberine. It's we have wild Oregon grapes here.
Oregon grapefruit?
Grapes.
Oh, the grapes.
Wild Oregon
Okay.
grapes. That's grow everywhere here around. So you just peel the stem and then you chew on on that bark.
Does that work?
Yeah, perfect.
And the Oregon grape root, do you know what Oregon grape root is called? Poor man's golden seal.
Oh, yeah.
It works, it has the berberine in it.
Yeah, berberine, yeah.
And it works like golden seal.
Yeah.
Here's a question. Yeah, there you go.
I just wanted to tell this lady over here, anybody, University of San Diego has done studies that show pregnant women that don't have adequate vitamin D3 tend to have diabetic children.
That's interesting.
Type 1.
That's interesting.
So when they chart it, and they've done studies for years, about 20 years, they've come up with this.
Vitamin D is a huge issue. It really is. When I came out of school, they told us don't go over 32. It was dangerous. And now we laugh at that because the lab tells us 30 to 100. Arvo Khanna, who's a neurologist that specializes in brain function, Arvo tells his patients he doesn't want it below 60 for cognitive function. The Society of, let's see, what is it? The American Society of Internal Medicine, is it? They published not long ago, and it said people who are significantly deficient in vitamin D reduce their cognitive function by 370-some%. That's huge. Yes?
I have two questions. One, in Oregon, in the summer, it's still daylight at 9 p.m. Would you still go at 9 p.m. and to bed at 9 p.m.? And also, how would you compare quinoa to brown rice with your diet?
Quinoa?
To brown rice.
Let me answer that one first. We have people who have gout. And there are some people who have gout. Brown rice exacerbates it. And they can't do brown rice. And so we do quinoa. The nice thing about the brown rice, especially on the cardiovascular side, is brown rice has a brand, like wheat bran. Brown rice has a brand. And the bran in brown rice, Duke found, is very good for for cardiac function. So it is really good for heart function, in improving heart function. But yes, we use, and quinoa actually has more protein than brown rice. So if it's not that cardiac issue, yeah. And even if it was cardiac and they have gout, you don't want to use it. And so you use the quinoa. We'll be right there. Let me grab over here and we'll come back. If it's light out. So let me give you the scientific of what they found. They found that if you take sunset, sunrise, meet to the middle, come back 3 hours. So whatever that comes up with. Yes?
The one thing I was wondering about, I spoke with you last night about a polycystic kidney disease problem, and the getting enough vitamin D, the kidneys aren't processing things properly. Therefore, how do you get your vitamin D if you can't have a type of vitamin D that will be assimilated because of the kidney function problem?
So, the best way to get vitamin D is by sunshine. But vitamin D, and I have a good friend of mine, and he'll still argue till the cows come home. And y'all cow folks understand till the cows come home. And he'll argue, and Dawn knows this guy very well, and he'll argue that all you need is 5,000 IUs a day. I had a lady come in. She's Caucasian. We know that when you have, in Africa, their skin is black, and physicians will tell them that they have sunglasses on. And it takes 6 times more sun exposure to get the same amount of vitamin D as it does for me. When I'm there, they'll tell them that. So this lady's Caucasian, so that's not an issue. She works in landscaping year-round. She takes 5,000 IUs a day. She came in and her vitamin D level was 12. So I said, okay, then let's go to BID. Let's go twice a day. So we went to 10,000 a day for 3 months. It went to 17. So then I called a buddy of mine in Washington, D.C. We used to work together. He's a physician up there, and he does a lot in vitamin D research. He said, let's go 40,000. Let's go 20,000 BID. So we went to 40,000. 3 months, 24. So we're still trying to figure out what's going on here and why she's not assimilating. And about a week later, he calls me around noontime. And he said, Walt, did you see the research just came out today? And I said, yeah, I saw it. Magnesium. He says, yeah, try it. So we went to magnesium to bowel tolerance. And don't trust the mag citrate. Our hospital in Greenville, now the lab is telling the physicians there not to use a mag serum because only 1.5 to 2% of your magnesium's in the serum. The most of it, the majority of it's in the RBC, and the lab guys are saying it's not equal. There's more in the serum, so it's not really an accurate number. So do a magnesium RBC if you really want to find out a good magnesium level. Pardon? Don't do a serum, do an RBC. And so what we did with this lady, we just went to magnesium to bowel tolerance. Bowel tolerance means give her as much as she can handle, citrate until she has a loose stool and back up till she has bowel tolerance. Still did the 40,000 BID, 20,000 BID, so that she had 40,000 a day. At 3 months later, she was at 97. And she maintains that now because she was low in magnesium. See, if you worry a lot, like that group of people that we won't talk about, that's stressed a lot. Well, see, when you're stressed, adrenaline goes up. And God put a fire extinguishing system in our body that when we're stressed, we dump magnesium to protect the cells from the adrenaline. There's a question here. We'll come back over here. Take a break.
I'd like to back up just a second to the brown rice.
Yes.
You was talking about gout. Does that affect pseudo-gout in the same way?
It's person specific. Even with just regular gout, it may or may not. It's just person specific. So you just have to, on gout, and we'll answer this question, then we'll take a break. On gout, the biggest issue I find with gout is sugar. Sugar is huge. Protein from meat and protein from legumes. And that's hard in my neck of the woods because we were raised up on brown beans, kidney beans, soup beans. And so lentils, any of the dried beans, the legumes can raise it. Some people, kale will do it. Some people, oatmeal will do it. It just depends on the person. The best way to treat gout, I have found, one is tart cherry juice. I had one guy it took a quart a day because he liked drinking beer. When he quit drinking beer, he didn't have to drink as much. Alcohol. What's the problem with alcohol? Sugar. And so when he quit drinking beer, he didn't have to use he didn't have the problem with gout like he was having. Another one works extremely well with gout is celery seeds. 1 teaspoon or 3 capsules 3 times a day. And that works very, very well. Yes, sir, you had a question.
Yes, I was just curious. This preacher told me, he said this in a sermon. He said that K2, D3 and K2 work good by themselves, but they even work way better together.
Yes.
D3 and K2, yeah.
Do MK7. K2, MK7?
D3 and K2.
But if you do MK7, the type of K2 is called MK7. It works even better. But K2 is good enough. And D3, D3 lasts in the blood twice as long as D2.
Oh.
And you can get a vegetarian source of K2.
Okay.
You can get it from mushrooms. You can get it from sea vegetables.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you what, let's take a break. How long do we want to take a break? Okay, so we're going to come back let's shoot for 4 o'clock. if we're a little after, just right at 4 o'clock, we're going to talk about cardiovascular disease. What do you do for blood pressure? What do you do for hypercholesterolemia? What do you do for angina? What do you do for these things?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So we won't spend as much time on the nutrition component of cardiovascular disease. But who's heard of John McDougall? John McDougall says that the rice diet, Duke's rice diet, Kempner's rice diet, is the best diet in the world for cardiovascular disease. Actually, McDougall says it'll cure about anything, which I don't agree with that. But McDougall, John McDougall, says that the rice diet, yes, but for cardiovascular disease, he says that it's the best diet for cardiovascular disease. Yeah. Or at least he used to say that. And so we won't go into the depth of the cardiovascular disease because to the rice diet because we just did. Cardiovascular disease is cardio, heart, vascular, the vascular system. Or some people just call it heart disease. But let's talk first about the number one problem. What do you think the number one problem is? High blood pressure. The number one cause of high blood pressure, again, the roots and the cause, and so you've got to get rid of the cause. The number one cause of hypertension is stress. Stress raises cortisol, stress lowers potassium, and thus you have hypertension. There's a lot of things you can do for stress. The 8 laws of health. I remember an old doc at Florida Hospital told me years ago, he says, Walt, if you want to address stress, the best thing I ever found was B complex. B complex is amazing for stress. Something I learned from Neil Nedley for stress is lithium orotate. Lithium, Lithium, orotate, Orotate. It's not the drug lithium. It's an element in the soil. When we're stressed, we dump lithium, we dump B, we dump magnesium, dump a lot of stuff. But those are needed to deal with stress. And I was in Canada a couple months ago, and I was staying at a home of a farmer. He had 4,500 acres, and they decided they're going to buy another 1,000 acres. That's a big farm. And I was talking to his wife. She's Russian, and I was telling her about the issue of lithium orotate and stress. She says, I'm not surprised. She said, the USSR, when it was when the wall was still up, she said they would send us to lithium springs to calm us down. Where are you from?
Yeah.
So you're familiar with lithium springs? Is there some there? Okay. Yes. Do we have lithium springs here? And it has lithium? Go bathe in it. Drink it. Or you can drink it. Or you can just take lithium capsules, supplements. But lithium is very, very good for stress. Magnesium is very good for stress. When you're stressed, remember you dump magnesium. And so you need more magnesium to deal with the next stressor. How much lithium orotate? So a lot of times folks will use like 5 milligrams 3 times a day. You can go up to 40. We know that patients that have something called Alzheimer's fits, an Alzheimer's patient that has they just have a fit, they'll use 100 milligrams to help bring them out of the Alzheimer's fit. Yes, ma'am?
Did you say magnesium orotate? Or
No.
citrate?
So magnesium, there's different kinds of magnesium. There is, it was lithium orotate. Lithium, Lithium, orotate, Orotate. On the magnesium, it's either like a rifle to deal with something specific, like Magtine for the brain, or citrate as a shotgun for the whole body. So it depends on what you're using it for. I like citrate as a shotgun. It depends on you. A lot of people have stress. And if you have stress, you need to take it every day because you're dumping it. The other thing is if you're taking calcium, one of the mistakes that I see often is folks are prescribed calcium by their provider. And if you take, say, 1,000 milligrams of calcium, it's going to take 500 milligrams, half the amount of calcium, 500 milligrams of magnesium to break the calcium down. And if you're not taking extra magnesium, then you're going to be deficient. It's estimated that 85% of Americans are magnesium deficient. That's not surprising because the number one diagnosis in America is stress. Stress dumps magnesium, therefore you'd expect to see magnesium deficiency. Yes, ma'am? Hang on just a sec. We got want to let them folks out in TV land here.
Thank you. I'm confused about the magnesium citrate. One of them you said is for your brain, and another magnesium is for your body. Can you repeat those?
Yes. So Magtine, that's a brand name, or thionate, magnesium thionate. That is more for the brain. But magnesium citrate, that's more systemic. It's good for the brain. It's good for muscles. It's good for nerves. It's good for the bowels. It's good for the heart. And you can do magnesium different ways. You can do a magnesium oil. Magnesium oil, you can rub it on your chest for angina, or if you have, say, congestive heart failure, it's going to get to the muscle, and the heart muscle, or your leg muscles if you have cramps. It gets to them faster transdermal than it does by mouth, PO. And so if a person's having heart problems, such as congestive heart failure, or if they're having angina, a friend of mine, he's a physician up in Washington, he rubs that on the chest, and it works well for angina, or it works well for just providing that magnesium to the heart muscle. 75% of leg cramps, restless leg, is due to magnesium deficiency, which is, again, we have a lot of magnesium deficiency. And so you can take it by mouth, or you can just rub it on your legs. Number 2, magnesium. Number 1 for restless leg cramps. Number 1 is magnesium. Number 2 is dehydration. Number 3 is potassium, and number 4 is iron. Those are the big 4 for leg cramps and restless leg. Yes, magnesium, number 1, dehydration, number 2, potassium, number 3, and iron, number 4. And we're seeing more and more people come into the ED, the emergency department, and with restless leg, and when they're testing them, finding that they have potassium deficiency.
I was just going to ask, is this on? I was going to ask what relation drinking water has to do with muscle cramps.
That's second. Number 2 is dehydration. Yes, so dehydration does affect muscle cramps. Potassium's number 3, and iron's number 4. A great source of iron is blackstrap molasses, tablespoon 3 times a day. A lot of people have problems with iron pills, with constipation, or with cramping, abdominal cramping. There's a product it's called Hemaplex. Hemaplex by Nature's Plus. It's excellent, and has 85 milligrams of elemental iron, and it works very, very well for iron deficiency. There's a question up here. There's a couple questions.
I have a neighbor lady, is this on? And she has really, really high blood pressure. She eats a typical American diet, and she doesn't exercise because she's very afraid. It doesn't take a lot, and it goes really high. Her husband's afraid too, and she'll end up in the hospital. I really want to reach out and help her, but I don't want to be presumptuous and not think that she hasn't tried things. I don't know how to approach her. I feel like through God's message, I have help to offer her, but I'm not quite sure. Do you have any suggestions?
Yes. So the very first item we're going to look at is stress. There's many items we're going to look at here. And so for stress, there's another one that's very good for stress, especially anxiety. It is the best thing I have found for anxiety. And she may have some issues of this. And that is take 1 drop of lavender essential oil and 1 drop of vetiver, V-E-T-I-V-E-R, V-E-T-I-V-E-R, vetiver, V-E-T-I-V-E-R. It's an essential oil. It's another. And do you have vetiver? Do you have any vetiver? It's a great tool. Yes, it's a great tool. Literally, I'll see in numerous occasions, I found anxiety, PTSD, come to neutral within 2 to 4 minutes, usually within 2 minutes. I mean, it is, yes, topical. And so what they do is they put it here on the wrist, right where you take the pulse, so it transdermally goes into the blood here, rub it here, and then breathe it. Now it's getting into the lungs. It's amazing. It's 1 drop of each. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. Vetiver is called the PTSD essential oil. I had a guy come in one day, and he was a Vietnam vet. This eye was just doing this. This eye was constant. And I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "I'm having a PTSD attack." And I said, "Can you try this?" And so I put it on me first, and then he put it on himself. And then within 4 minutes, this totally stopped. He had total symmetry, and he said his PTSD was gone.
So can they do that multiple times a day?
As needed, PRN.
So for chronic anxiety, it could be used?
Yes, sir. Now, what I try to do is first look at the 8 laws. Are they getting adequate nutrition? Are they getting water? Are they getting exercise? Because exercise is a great tool to lower cortisol. Are they getting their sleep at night? Are they, they have a good vitamin D? Do they have a good B12? So I look at all those first. And B complex and lithium orotate and magnesium, that's going to help with stress. So then when it gets to this is more on an acute episode. I'll put this on, but my goal is to keep them from getting to that acute episode, if that makes sense. Oh, there's a question here.
Yes. If you're taking magnesium and then you need to take calcium as well,
No, ma'am, that's a big misnomer.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. And we'll have physicians tell folks that if you're taking magnesium, you have to take calcium.
Yeah.
That is not true. If you're taking calcium, you got to take magnesium. So you can take magnesium by itself. It's not a problem. Some people just get the two confused.
So how do you know if you need calcium or magnesium?
Well, your best source of calcium is not a supplement. Your best source of calcium is green leafy vegetables. A book called Death by Calcium. Death by Calcium. Read it. It's an excellent book where it talks about our best source of calcium is green leafy vegetables. Like your nettle again. Nettle is an excellent source of calcium. And so try to get it through your greens. If it's not enough, then you can take a look and, you can do some lab tests. A lot of ladies are concerned about osteoporosis. It's so hard to teach. There's so much I want to share with y'all. And it reminds me of something I want to share it with you. Osteoporosis, there's 4 major things. Number 1 is enough calcium in your bones. Number 2 is you have enough vitamin D to pull it out. And Dr. Tech Watkins in Washington, D.C. will tell you he wants 80 to 100 to do a good job pulling it out. I had a lady come in one day, and her doctor sent her to me for me to tell her what food had calcium in it so she'd no longer eat that food because her calcium was high. And I said, based on what? She said, the lab work. I said, can I see the lab? She had it in the car. And sure enough, her calcium was high. And I'm thinking, boy, I wish he'd done a vitamin D. And I look on the back page, it was tanked out. I mean, like 8. Well, she didn't have enough vitamin D to take the calcium out of the blood. And so she needed to increase her vitamin D, is what she needed. So number 2 is an adequate vitamin D. And again, Watkins is wanting 80 to 100 vitamin D level. And do you get that vitamin D level where you want? Yes, sunshine. Yes, taking vitamin D. Yes, your K2. Better yet, MK7 K2. And also your magnesium will help you absorb the vitamin D. And then, number 3, NASA found that when astronauts go to space, they have bone density loss because of weightlessness. So we know that weight-bearing exercise is very important for bone density. And NASA found the best tool to increase bone density for astronauts who come back from space is a mini trampoline. And so use a mini trampoline, but don't do what I did. I was out here. I was down at Lodi. I went to one of Danny Vieira's, what did he call them? Yes, one of his expos. Yes, and the guy was there with Rebandair or whatever. Harold Cherney talked me into getting 3 of them for the gym, so I did, because ours at the back of the gym was just an old Montgomery Ward's one. And the springs on it were like this. They were like a rectangle. And you want springs on a mini trampoline that taper like a football. Like those old rocking horses we used to have, the springs tapered down on each end. Because if you don't, it pops back too fast and it's too hard on the joints and the muscle, and on the organs. So I got 3 of them. They came in, and so I put them on it, the patients on it that were needing that. And next day, everybody was sick with flu-like symptoms, felt like they got beat by a baseball bat. I called Cherney. I said, Cherney, what's going on? He started laughing. Now, how many of y'all know? Any of y'all know Cherney? He's just a jolly old fella, just great guy. He started laughing. I said, Cherney, what are you laughing at? He said, what'd you do? I said, I did 15 minutes BID, 15 minutes twice a day. He started laughing even louder. I said, Cherney, why are you laughing at me? He said, I did the same thing. He did the same thing. He said, Walt, these folks that are coming to you, he said, they're toxic. They're lethargic. They don't do much. They sit on the couch. They're not active. We know that a mini trampoline turns on the lymphatic pumps tenfold. We just kicked on the sewer pumps that were plumb clogged up tenfold. The liver couldn't handle it. And so they got what's called a Hertz syndrome, a healing crisis. And so he said, here's what you do. And this was in like 2001. He said, here's what you do. From this point forward, when you put a person on a mini trampoline, don't do more than 5 minutes 3 times a day for a week. Then go to 10 minutes 3 times a day for a week. And then you can do whatever you want to. And I find I have not had a problem since.
Very good.
Number 4, from osteoporosis. It's not as much an issue for males as it is females that I have found. I might be plumb wrong, but I find it's mostly females. And that is you have to have, and according to Dr. Lee's work down in California back in the 90s, he found that you have to have adequate estrogen, adequate progesterone. And the best way I found to stabilize that estrogen and progesterone, he was using progesterone cream, but one of his associates, Cynthia Johnston, Cynthia found using wild yam cream. And as you listen to Barbara, those of y'all listen to Barbara, you hear Barbara talking about wild yam cream. We've been using wild yam cream now for 20 years and find it works extremely well on hormones. And so you do a fourth to a half a teaspoon twice a day. If the lady is still mincing, then cycles. Then you stop when the cycle starts, stop for 7 days, and then start again. Now, I had a gal the other day, she has 3 cycles a month. Y'all think you got a hard time? Think of that poor girl. 3 periods a month. And so she has less time than she does have. And so the first period, you stop. The second, the third, whatever they got, you just keep on going and using it. But the first one you stop. Day one, stop for 7 days and start again. Those 4 things I have found to be very effective because wild yam cream stabilizes progesterone. When you stabilize progesterone, you stabilize estrogen and testosterone. And so that wild yam does a great job stabilizing the estrogen. Your next question.
So I have another question. If you were to take calcium and magnesium together, what's the ratio? What?
It's a 2 to 1 at least.
2 to 1?
2 to 1.
Meaning?
Yes. So if you take 1,000 milligrams of calcium, 500 milligrams of magnesium.
Oh, okay.
But we're told that magnesium isn't just magnesium to help everything else. That's just to deal with the calcium. So it's 2 to 2. I mean, a 1 to 1 ratio is good. There's a question up here. Okay. Let's take that one first.
Will normal walking, be as good as a mini trampoline in stimulating the lymphatic system?
It will increase the lymphatic system, yes. Not as much because you're not going to get tenfold out of walking. Also, you're not going to, NASA found that walking's not enough. Rebounding is much better to drive that calcium in, that weight bearing to drive, because of your G-force involved, they found it's much more effective driving that calcium in. Yes? There's a question up here. Where's the question? Oh, back here. Okay, go ahead.
What do you do for insomnia?
Insomnia. We'll come back to cardiovascular disease. But you know, it really is part of cardiovascular disease because we're told that sleep deprivation increases your risk factor or exacerbates cardiovascular disease. Mm-hmm. It affects blood pressure because if a person's hypertensive while they're awake, when they're asleep, many times their blood pressure will come down. But if they don't have contiguous sleep at night and they're waking up multiple times, then that blood pressure is down, up, because it goes back up when you wake up. So yes, an insomnia is an adequate question to ask at this time for hypertension. So for insomnia, when I first started back in Tennessee 20 years ago, the top 2 things I dealt with was stress and female hormones, or maybe female hormones and stress. It was huge. Mm-hmm. But what I'm dealing with most today is sleep deprivation. And we've seen that significantly increase since COVID. Yes, we see more issues of balance since COVID. Yes, we see more issues of cognitive function since COVID. Mm-hmm. Yes, we see more issues of pulmonary issues since COVID. We have folks that are still having a cough from 3-4 years ago, and it hasn't fully recovered yet. But sleep deprivation is one that really jumped. Now let me share with you what Duke University found, Harvard University found, and National Geographic found, because both of them started studying this post-COVID, identifying it as an issue. And both of them came to the same conclusion. One of the first things you want to do, my sister-in-law works at Vanderbilt. She went home and works out of her bedroom. She still works at home out of her bedroom. And what they found is the brain's getting confused. Harvard says when you go to the bathroom, you're not saying, well, I think I'll eat a pizza in here. Right? That brain knows what that room's for. And Harvard says that the bedroom should only be used for 3 things. Because during COVID, the bedroom became the office, it became the dining room, it became the entertainment room, it became the library, it became just the family room to talk. It was the multi-purpose room. So if you're going to sleep, your brain's kind of trying to figure out, well, what do I do in here? Or if you wake up in the night, you go, I think I might do one of these other things that it's used to doing in the room, and it doesn't go back to sleep. So they said, both of them said the room is only for 3 things. Number 1, sleeping. Number 2, changing your clothes. Number 3, relations between spouse. That's it, period. Everything out of the room. And then you retrain the brain. That's what that room's for, and it will help with sleep. There's another thing that we're finding, and that is the use of melatonin. Now, melatonin doesn't make a person go to sleep. Dark makes a person go to sleep. So when it gets dark and you go to bed, you want it plumb dark. No white outside, no lights outside, no night lamp, no bathroom light, nothing. Plumb dark. If you wake up in the night and allow white light, whether it's you turn on your lights, your phone, whatever, you got light from a light outside, that white light will turn off the effect of the melatonin. Now, melatonin, it takes about an hour to peak out to max. And then it works for about 3 to 4 hours. But so you're looking at an hour plus possibly 4, so you got 5 hours. But if you get up prior to that and you turn on a white light or any light other than a red light, it turns it off. So it's now recommended that if we wake up in the middle of the night, use a red light to go to the bathroom and come back. And red light's plenty of light, because when I lived in the fire hall back 40-some years ago, we had 2 light bulbs in the room. One was a white light that we turn on when we do whatever, and the other one, the light, was when dispatch hit the buzzer, our buzzer went off, but our light would go on, and the white light was too bright, and you're trying to put on your socks and put on your clothes and trying to adjust with the light. Well, the red light, we didn't have to do it. We'd wake up, and it didn't hurt our eyes. And we had plenty of light to dress, go out through the hallway. We had a red light out there, go into the bay. And by that time, we were starting to get acclimated. So red light's plenty good for you. There are some people that melatonin exacerbates, or it magnetizes dream activity. And it may even give nightmares. It is felt by some that it's the quality of the melatonin. That though melatonin is probably made by just 3 manufacturers, not everybody maintains it properly, and poor quality melatonin can affect that happening. What else do we do? My problem is turning off my brain. I'm used to having a bunch of employees, and I'm used to getting a lot done. In my little store, there's just a couple of us. And my list is always bigger than what's reasonable and obtainable. Because just like right now, there's so many things interrupt and so many other questions, and I don't get a lot done. Because there's so much need out there. Someone comes in. I just had a phone call just a moment ago. Got a little girl that's having some major issues. And she's in the hospital needing some help. So they called and said, "Can you call me quick as possible?" And that takes precedence, doesn't it? It's huge. And so people come in with big issues. Well, my brain that bothers me. It drives me nuts. And so I go to bed and I'm thinking about everything I didn't get done. How am I going to get that done tomorrow? Because I had a whole bunch of other stuff scheduled for tomorrow. And so what Mary Lou does now is she gives me an ashwagandha, maybe 2 ashwagandas. And that turns this off many a time. It turns the brain down.
What is it?
Ashwagandha. Ashwagandha. It's an herb. Get a good strong ashwagandha. Another thing I do is I'll take a magnesium roller ball, magnesium oil, and I'll rub it on the base of my feet. Sometimes that'll work. And sometimes she says, you want a back massage? Yeah, I need a back massage. I'll take a back massage anytime she'll give me a back massage. She says it helps her fall asleep. I'll be glad to help her fall asleep. And usually she falls asleep before I do. But anyway, it does. It helps me fall asleep, a back massage. So give your spouse a back massage or have them give you a back massage. It can help. There's all kinds of things you can use. But what I find in sleep deprivation is it's not a cookie cutter. Everybody's different. Just as we talked about earlier, the issue of Benadryl. It may make him go to sleep and it doesn't do a lick to her, even on the pharmaceutical side. And then there's people who, you know how people use deodorant and it works for a while and it quits working, you got to then change deodorant? Same thing happens here. It just quits working. So what do I use? There's a product called Tranquil Sleep. Tranquil Sleep. It has L-theanine, it's an amino acid. It has 5-HTP, and it has melatonin. Works pretty well. I had one girl, she'd come in, she's supposed to chew up 2 tablets. And I told her, chew up 2 tablets. Husband comes in next day, said she was scared of it, just took 1. She went to the bathroom and fell asleep on the toilet. So, you know, it works for some people. Mary Lou uses that. It doesn't do anything for me, but helps her. Some people find that there's magnesium, just magnesium PO helps them, but it doesn't everybody. Like a Calm works for some people. Some people use herbs like valerian, skullcap, hops, passion flower, chamomile, wild lettuce even help you fall asleep. Catnip will help you fall asleep. Don't give it to your cat. It'll wake it up. And the worst people I've ever dealt with sleep was at the time of 9/11. Our patients coming in out of New York City and Washington, D.C. I was located just outside of Washington, D.C. So I called Dr. Walter Strachan. Anybody knew Walter Strachan? Strachan was a psychiatrist. And Strachan said, here's what you do. Take 2 tablespoons of valerian powder, 2 tablespoons of skullcap powder, and 2 tablespoons of hops powder. That's a lot. And 2 cups of water. Have them drink it at 8 o'clock. It didn't work. So I called him next day and he said, well, let's do it 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock. Didn't work. He said, wow. He said, normally just 1 dose with a lady whose husband just passed away and she's hysterical. It usually works. He says, keep backing up 2 hours. We did 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Didn't work. We did 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and that worked. For 6 months, every single patient, we ran that trial. And every single one out of New York City and Washington, D.C., we had to do it 4 times before it put them to sleep. Wow. Only one other time have I found a person that way is a lady in North Carolina. She was in Winston-Salem. They'd done anesthesia on elective surgery. Anesthesia messed up, and it caused her to go brain dead, and she couldn't sleep, and that's what we had to use for her. So there's various things out there. You just have to find what works for you. It can be difficult. There's a question over here.
Back to the hormones. I started out on the wild yam, but then when I heard about bioidentical hormones, you can get them compounded now from plants, so that now I'm on a compounded progesterone and estradiol and testosterone. It's a vag cream, and it works just fine.
Good.
And I think more women would do much better with that because there's no side effects like with the drugs.
Yeah. We haven't found any side effects with the wild yam. I don't remember Barbara finding any. Another thing we add is we use nettle. One day I was at my herb cabinet, and Dawn's been in, my herb cabinet is almost as wide as that screen right there. And I was there working at the herb cabinet, and this lady comes in, they own a big old dude ranch. And I mean, she's decked out cowgirl. And she said, got any nettle? And I said, I think I'm plumb out. Let me look. And I looked, and I was plumb out on top. So I said, let me look down underneath. I looked underneath, I squatted down, and I was plumb out of nettle tea. Because what happened is Mountain Rose had run out. And I said, no, I'm plumb out. She said, you better get it in quick. She said, Cott County's going to make national news again if you don't get it in. And I said, why? She says, many women, as Mary Lou got on wild yam, on nettle for hormones, we're going to make national news if we ain't got that stuff. And it works. It does. It helps with the adrenals. The other thing we use is flaxseed. Flaxseed, 2 tablespoons to 3 tablespoons twice a day based on stress. More stress, up to 3. Grind, eat within 15 minutes. Has phytoestrogen in it, and it works quite well.
Are you chewing that or putting it in water?
The flaxseed, grind it with a coffee grinder and then put it over your food or something, put it in something dry.
So I have a question. Could you address the grounding sheet for?
Yes. Grounding sheets there are people who claim they're having improvement laying on a grounding sheet. What is a grounding sheet? A grounding sheet, all it is, it's like being outside and being barefooted. It's like laying down on the ground. Where did Adam and Eve sleep? On the ground. There are people who say they just feel better barefooted, walking around on the ground or laying down on the ground. There's no voodoo with that, I don't believe. And a grounding sheet, what it does is you have a little rod that you can stick down in the ground outside through the window. Runs in the ground like a ground rod for electricity. And then it comes up and it goes to a sheet that's full of wires. And so it's like you're laying on the ground outside, they claim. And there are people say they feel better with that. And all it is like laying down on the ground. So I've really looked at that, and I don't see anything where they're claiming or that I see that it could, because that's a very good question, because there's a lot of good stuff, bad stuff, and even though it works, it could be a bad stuff. You want to find what's the origin. Like martial arts, what's the origin? A number of things. What's the origin? Well, if the origin is something that's not of God, then even though it works, you don't want to do it. But where a person is just walking barefooted or using something that's grounded to the ground, I don't see a problem with that. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I want to go back to the little trampoline. Should one be jumping on it who has really bad joints, real arthritis in the ankle, the knee, the hip? Should they be jumping on it at all?
Dr. Cherney said it depends on the patient. Even a patient that's post-hip surgery or whatever, he said as long as it's not bothering him, and maybe you're not jumping, maybe you're just doing what's called the health bounce, where you're just going like this, just like a baby bouncing in a crib. As long as it's not causing injury to it, it's not a problem, he said. And so I'm going from what Harold Cherney was triple board surgery certified. He was a surgeon, emergency medicine, and also family practice. And Cherney found no problem using the mini trampoline, especially for situations like that, in the health bounce, as long as the patient wasn't finding injury doing it.
Hi, I was not quick enough. The kind of the formula that you gave.
If you can hold it a little closer to your mouth.
Oh, you can.
There you go. We can hear you now.
The formula that you talked about people increasing it 4 times every 2 hours, that had skull cap in it.
Yes.
I missed that. I missed the combination.
That's 2 tablespoons of valerian root powder, 2 tablespoons skull cap powder, 2 tablespoons hops powder. Now, and 2 cups of water. Now, Dr. Ted Watkins in D.C., he finds if he just gives them a mess of skull cap, it puts them to sleep. Now, go back to Loma Linda to Dr. Walter Strachan, the psychiatrist who didn't use any pharmaceuticals the last 14 years of his practice in psychiatry. That's amazing, isn't it? And he would have, and when I would call him on folks with depression, he'd have us use, a quart of water with a cup of skullcap in it. And then he said, Walt, keep increasing it. If it's as thick as mud and they'll drink it, do it. It won't hurt them. And it will just help them even more. Well, Dr. Watkins, who's up in D.C., he uses skullcap, just high doses, like a lot, like Strachan was, a lot for the tea, a cup or more in a quart. And the problem with drinking a quart at night, well, you got a urination issue there. So you may want to just do a strong extract, so you don't have as much volume of fluid. But Watkins claims he's getting excellent results just using skullcap and putting people out. Get Hang on just a sec. Okay, we'll come back over there.
Dr. Apelian, she said good method for sleeping is to get organic banana peel with banana and then make strong tea out of it and drink it.
Okay, using banana peel, yes, back here. And then we're going to go back, and we're going to do 2 here, then we're going back to cardiovascular disease. Okay, ladies first. Okay, we'll go gentlemen first because she didn't have a microphone.
Most of the, what you've talked about is for initial insomnia. Do you have recommendations for terminal insomnia?
Yeah. Number 1 is pray. It's challenging. It really is challenging. But if a person's really, there's a couple other things they tell us. They tell us, is the room dark? Well, going back to that thing with melatonin, is it quiet? Is it clean? Is it cool? If you're thinking about things, write down a piece of paper. There's a lot of things they look at. But if they're really difficult, I go back to what we did for the folks after 9/11. That's the hardest thing. That's the strongest thing I know of. And I don't know of any problem with it long term. Yes.
Okay, I have a couple questions. The first one is our household has a real problem with insomnia. Mm-hmm. Except for my husband, he goes to sleep the minute he hits the bed and starts snoring. And so then I can't sleep. And then I move to another bedroom, and our son is in the other room, and he's got PTSD with insomnia, terrible. And so I have trouble sleeping. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just wondering what we can do. Where do we start?
You want to get to the cause. Address those other causes. or find you a room that you can sleep that's quiet.
And the other thing is, do you take appointments?
Yes, ma'am. You can just call the mustard, you can go to www.themustardseed.us, www.themustardseed.us, okay. And then just click on appointments.
Okay,
yes.
Because I think we need help.
Yeah, okay. Let's go back to cardiovascular disease. The alarm's going off. So for cardiovascular disease, the number 1 problem is what? I'm sorry. We didn't even get to cardio. I mean, we only got to stress, stress and high blood pressure. What's the number 1 cause of high blood pressure? Stress. So address those stress issues. Number 2 is dehydration. When you're dehydrated, the blood is thicker and stickier. The heart has to pump harder. When you're dehydrated, the brain doesn't have enough water, and you're more prone to stress, the first problem. When you're dehydrated, the kidneys aren't getting adequate water, and the kidneys have to have adequate hydration to work, and the kidneys are the switches that run the blood pressure. When you're dehydrated, you're not urinating as much. The hypothalamus says, we're in a drought, and so you don't urinate as much, and so you're not getting rid of sodium like you should. And when you're dehydrated, as we talked about before, with the conductivity, it's higher. So dehydration affects a lot with hypertension. I had a guy one time, his wife comes to me, I'm at a health fair, and she says, give me something simple. He won't do nothing. And the medicine is not working at all that the doctor's giving him. So I said, let's try hydration. He worked outside and contracting. And so 2 weeks later, I saw her. I would go to the hospital to do a talk to their staff on lifestyle health. And who's there? That lady. And so as I'm finishing, getting ready to talk, she just raised her hand. She goes, I met Walt 2 weeks ago. Let me tell you about him. I'm going, oh boy, what's she going to say? She said, 2 weeks ago, my husband had hypertension. Medications were not working. Walt said, just have him drink adequate water. She says, now he cannot take his hypertensive medication. It drives him too low. In other words, his hypertension's he's not having a problem. It can be that simple. Is it always that simple? No, but it can be that simple. Number 3, ideal body weight. And there's all kinds of research that you can read on NIH about being ideal body weight and what being overweight affects hypertension. So you want to address the body weight. Number 3 is ideal body weight. Number 4, if you're having renal failure, are you having problems with renal issues? Again, kidneys are the switches that regulate blood pressure. So are you having renal issues? I had a lady come in just so many times we see people coming in. Usually we can see stage 4 renal failure within 3 months, totally gone. Stage 4, within 3 months, gone. And I had a lady come in, it was last month, and she said, do you remember me? I said, no, ma'am. She and her husband. She said, 3 years ago we came in here, And well, she said, they were getting ready to put a port in me for dialysis, and you gave me something to do. She said, I did it. She said, I told them to hold off on putting the port in for 3 months to try it out. She says, I went in at the end of 3 months, and the physician was bound and determined I need to get a port in. She said, look at my labs. He said, I saw your labs 3 months ago. Now, why this guy did not look at current labs, I have no idea. And so, because he'd run some. And he says, I know your labs. You need to have a port put in. She says, look at my current labs. He said, I'll tell you. I've looked at your labs. She says, you ain't touching me till you look at my labs. My current labs. He disgustedly gets up, walks out, comes back in the room. She said his face was white as a piece of paper. He said, what happened? He says, you have no renal failure. And what did we do? Again, we go back to Duke University. And that's how I first found Kempner's program. Kempner developed his program for hypertensive, what was called at that time malignant hypertension. But then Kempner found that it also helped patients that had diabetes. He found it also helped patients that had renal failure. He also found it helped patients who needed to lose weight. And so what do you do for renal failure at Duke? Where they find it worked well? It was the Duke diet. It was the Duke diet, the exercise, the water. Now, the challenge with renal failure is many times when a person is under medical direction, they've been told not to drink more than 1,200, even 1,000 cc's of water. Then just go with what they're told. Don't go against. But if they haven't been told that, get them to drink water, according to Dr. Ted Watkins. Watkins he's a surgeon, and he had the best anti-rejection of kidney transplants in all North America, all Eastern North America. And one of the keys he did was exercise, adequate water. He also found that if he do charcoal. Now, what is the number one use of activated charcoal in the United States? Water purification. What do the kidneys do? So what Watkins did is he would do 1 teaspoon twice a day or 3 caps twice a day. It would assist the kidneys in purification. Now, don't take it within 2 hours either side of a medication. It's not going to work. I tell girls that are in their childbearing age, I'll say, don't take it within 2 hours of your birth control pill. It ain't going to work tonight. Or let's say you're on Lanoxin for tachycardia. If you take it within 2 hours either side, it's not going to work for that the Lanoxin for the tachycardia. So when you do take activated charcoal, don't take it within 2 hours of a prescription. And so what did we do for this lady? What she did is she did the rice diet. She did adequate water. I don't remember for her if she was stuck to the 1,200 cc's or not, or if she did adequate. I don't remember that. But she did exercise 4 times a day. She went to bed at 9 o'clock. She took corn silk extract. Corn silk extract. Corn silk is the best herb that I have found for kidney function. You do, if it's significant, you do 2 mLs 3 times a day. If not, once or twice a day. Then you want to use dandelion root extract. Dandelion root. Now for the kidneys and for the liver, you do root. Dandelion root. For congestive heart failure or for edema in the legs, which can be from congestive heart failure, for lungs or for legs, you're going to do leaf. And we did coenzyme Q10. Dr. Watkins uses CoQ10, 100 milligrams, 4 times a day. And then the activated charcoal. Now all of these, everything has what combination to them? Prayer. Yes, don't forget prayer. And that's what that lady did. And we've seen that numerous times of people coming in with renal failure, and it's usually at 3 months that their nephrologist will tell them there's no more renal failure. So is there renal issues? Back to hypertension. The next one we're going to look at is sodium. We talked about the conductivity. We talked, too much salt. And again, I think the biggest issue is the girl with the umbrella. Yes, Dawn. Oh, so same as corn silk. Same amount of dandelion root as corn silk. Yes?
What about if you have polycystic kidney disease, where there are cysts in the kidneys that are preventing them from functioning properly?
I don't know of a contraindication at this point. I don't know of any contraindication. Which we've done this with that condition. So I don't have a lot of experience with that, but we have done this for that. We've seen improvement. I haven't seen it plumb go away. Salt. Himalayan, I understand, is a little bit better than the Celtic for hypertension. You want to look, do you have clogged arteries? Do you have atherosclerosis? You know, is the pipe smaller? That's going to increase pressure. Do you have hardening of the arteries? The vessels go like this. And if you have rigidity, then you're going to have, the pressure is going to increase. And, you know, when the pressure goes up, when the heart is pumping. And the last one is our heart issues. Now, it is true that hawthorn berry works well for hypertension. We had a physician in our area that did no natural, but he did find that hawthorn berry worked better for hypertension than any other of his prescription medications that he had tried. We're told that hawthorn berry works like 3 different types of hypertensive medications. So hawthorn berry has a half-life of 4 hours. So if you use hawthorn berry, you want to use it 4 times a day. Any questions on hypertension? High cholesterol, hypercholesterolemia. A number of years ago, I was still working in regular health care, and I had some lab done, and it said my cholesterol was 288. Guys at work said, Walt, you got to look at your daddy, look at your granddaddy, you're genetically predisposed, you're going to have to take a statin. I didn't want a statin. I mean, you know, I worked in it, I knew there's problems with it, and I didn't want to take it. So I thought, well, I'll just cut out eating any kind of cholesterol, which is at the same time as what we were talking about at the table today. I totally cut out dairy. I'd already given up meat back when I was a kid. I think I was 17 at the stockyard, and I just saw too much, and I quit eating it. But I was still doing a lot of dairy. And and for other reasons, I also quit dairy, and I thought, well, let's just see if I cut out the dairy as a cholesterol producer. And I went to 104. That's all I did. Cut out dairy. I didn't change anything else. 288 to 104. So, pardon? And so when you look at your foods that have cholesterol. If it's got a mama, it's got cholesterol. If it has a mother, it has cholesterol. Yes?
My husband had a 4-way bypass, and he never had high cholesterol. He did have family history, and they put him on statins, and they won't take him off. And I've kind of begged, but he says absolutely not. And is there a reason that you can see for him to stay on it? He's not having muscle issues, so he's not seeing side effects.
What's his cholesterol now?
150?
My encouragement to get a second opinion.
Well, he's got a cardiologist and he's got a regular doctor. He's everybody and everything he reads is telling him that.
I'd go to somebody else.
Thank you.
Or I'd go to the medical director. God's the medical director. And ask God.
I've had high cholesterol for years, and they've had me on atrovastin, or however you say it. And I really am trying not to take anything that is a chemical in my body. So I stopped taking it, and I was taking red yeast rice, and that did not bring it down.
Yes, I don't find red yeast rice as effective as I'd like. Also, if you do take red yeast rice is a natural statin. and you still have to take CoQ10. See, when you take a statin drug, and NASA figured this out, part of it out, and this was in 2004, 2003. When you take see, the problem with cholesterol is if you have a sink and you open both spigots and you run that water, it's not going to overflow because it was engineered that way, unless you're clogging you're occluding the drain. But if someone goes and starts pouring 5-gallon buckets in there of water, it's going to eventually run over. So God made our body to produce cholesterol, and He made our body to get rid of cholesterol and keep it at the right level. The problem is not all, but most high cholesterol is due to we're just pouring 5-gallon buckets of cholesterol in there with the food that we eat, food that has cholesterol in it. So the doctors know that you're probably not going to change your tongue, that you're going to keep eating the cholesterol. So what they do is they give a drug that it works like hewing around a tree. And this is the example this medical doctor, who's also an astronaut, shared as I went listened to his training. And so if you hew around a tree, what's going to happen? It's going to die. You bark that tree plumb around, it's going to die. So what happens is he then shuts down your human cholesterol, because one of them branches is the production of human cholesterol, so you don't make as much human cholesterol. Now you're running off pig cholesterol, cow cholesterol, lobster cholesterol, shrimp cholesterol, or what kind of meat you're eating, or dairy cholesterol, which is cow cholesterol. But there's another branch on that tree, and it's the production of coenzyme Q10. It shuts that down too. And so if you take a statin, any kind of statin, whether it's a pharmaceutical statin or red yeast rice statin, it's a plant statin, it's still a statin, you've got to take CoQ10 because you're shutting down the CoQ10 production. And you need CoQ10 for cell wall stability, for oxygenation. CoQ10 is really important. But here's where NASA jumped in there. One of those branches on that tree, which is now common knowledge, but then it wasn't, it shuts down a chemical in the brain that helps with short-term memory. And so we see problems with people who take cholesterol, they're getting the leg cramps, or they may be getting short-term memory issues. It's one of the first things you want to check if a person's complaining of short-term memory. Are you taking a statin? What's your B12 level? Low B12 will cause short-term memory problems. And so he said that's not an option. Astronauts cannot have short-term memory problems. He says we have to relook at how we use statin drugs in the astronaut field. So there is another 2 items that I use. One is called Cholesterol Pro, which is by Now, and I believe it's bergamot is what it is. And then Cholesterol Pro, and I think it's bergamot. It's a fruit that's kind of combination, almost like a banana, like an orange and a lemon. Okay, it comes out of South America. Bergamot will lower cholesterol. It will also raise HDL, and it will also lower LDL. So it's a good tool. First month, you do 2 twice a day. Second month thereon, you do 1 twice a day. Is what the manufacturer recommends. The other item comes out of England, and it's called Listeril. Listeril. I have no idea how to spell it. Lysteri. I don't know. It's out of garlic. It's the same company that makes Alimed. And it's a very strong garlic. And we find that it also very effectively helps with cholesterol. But one of the things you want to know when you have high cholesterol is what is your HDL? Is your HDL 30, 24, or is it 55 or 60? And the HDL is like the cops. It goes gets the bad guys, the LDL, and puts handcuffs on them and takes them off to jail. And so you want a good HDL. And if you want to look at your cardiac risk factor, then you take total cholesterol divided by HDL, and you'd like the average risk is, well, it depends on what lab you listen to, but say 4.5, 4.55, some say 5. But you'd like it below 3.5 or 3. Below 3 is better. And the way you do that, increase that HDL. That's going to lower the HDL, and that's going to help with that cardiac risk ratio, which is at your risk of a heart attack. But how can you raise HDL? Exercise. Go to Neil's book called Proof Positive, and it's got a page in there that shows you how to raise that HDL by exercising, how much exercise you need to do. Also, garlic is very good to raise HDL. But another thing that will affect HDL is your vitamin D. A low vitamin D can pull, according to the American Lipidemic Society, it can lower your HDL. So you want a good vitamin D, 80, 90, like Dr. Watkins is looking for, and that can help pull your HDL up. And that can be huge for helping with your cholesterol.
So one more question. Because I had the high cholesterol, I now have thinning of one of my veins.
You have what?
Thinning of the vein.
Okay, thinning.
What can I do to build that back up, the vein, thicken the vein back up? Because it's like 30 millimeters and it's not what it should be.
I don't have an answer for that one. I haven't found one for that yet. Yes, ma'am.
I do not eat any cholesterol-containing foods, and my cholesterol remains above 200.
What's your HDL?
I don't recall at the moment, but I think the last it was higher than the LDL.
It's usually
And it
not
was-
higher than the LDL.
Pardon?
It's usually not higher than the LDL. It could be, but it's usually not.
But
It could be, though.
Shouldn't the HDL be higher than the LDL?
Not normally.
Not normal?
It can be, though. It's possible because I've seen some LDLs really low, and I've seen some HDLs 124. So, I'm sorry, I thought I saw a hand.
So
how's your liver working?
Seems to work fine.
So liver enzymes are looking good?
Apparently so, because all my labs come out good.
It's not a cookie cutter. Everybody's different, and it could be your body's just not doing what it needs to do. And so I would try the Cholesterol Pro and see how that works, or the Listeril and see how that works.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Thank you.
There's a hand over here. Nope, okay, we got her. You're good.
I'm good? Okay. For a blood thinner, is cayenne pepper the best thing to use? Because they want to put my husband on a statin drug because he's had some TIAs.
So two of the best blood thinners. Water. Water is an excellent blood thinner. But also, Dr. Agatha taught me about nattokinase, or if you're Japanese, it's natto kinase. It comes from the natto plant. And nattokinase is an excellent tool as a blood thinner. You can also use Phil Collins, a friend of Dawn and I, Dr. Collins. He'll do 6 ounces 3 times a day of Concord grape juice, and has had good success with that, thinning the blood. Garlic will thin the blood.
He has diabetes, so.
I can't hear.
He has diabetes, so what about the
Okay,
grape
then
juice?
I'd use the nattokinase and the garlic. Yes. Yes.
What about prostate?
Let me finish with hypertension. I'm trying to get that one done. So we've got hypertension, we've got hypercholesterolemia. Let's go to congestive heart failure. 4 years ago, I was noticing as I slept at night, Mary Lou was having wheezing and crackles. And it just got worse and worse. It wasn't anything short term. It was becoming more chronic. And so I got a chest x-ray. The radiologist said it was COPD. Her father was a smoker, 3 packs a day. She lived at home pretty well until she was 18. And so he was sure that's what it was. So we started looking at addressing lung issues, pulmonary issues for that. It only got worse. She got to the point that she couldn't even walk upstairs. And I'm going, I don't know. This is worse than I think we're dealing with. It's just too rapidly happening. And so went and took her to a friend. He looked at her in the same system. He pulls up the x-ray, pulls up the interpretation. He says, no, she just has COPD. We go back to office. A couple hours later, he calls me that afternoon. He says, Walt, I'm afraid she has what my wife died from 2 years ago. Get her back in here tomorrow morning. So, pardon? He said, get her back in here. I think she has what my wife had that died 2 years ago. So I took her in the next morning, and he did a full cardiac workup. They're at the hospital. They found there, at that time, the echo showed that she had an EF. She had an EF of like 10-15, ejection fraction. We had a, we went in and looked, and they said, you're squeaky clean. Squeaky clean. Have you ever used this drug? Yeah, she says. 44 years ago, I used it. It was a chemotherapy drug. They call it the Red Devil. It's adriamycin. And he said, your problem is very evident. He said, I brought in medical students to watch this. We went to in Knoxville. And they came in, and he wanted to show them what to look for. And he said, your heart failure is due to a drug you took 44 years ago. So I called a friend. He referred me to a brother-in-law of his in L.A., who's the guy who developed the technology, helped to develop the technology that you can be a Mayo and do open heart surgery somewhere else. He's a vascular surgeon. And he said, well, go to UAB. So we went to UAB, University of Alabama at Birmingham. Get there, she presented well. They go in and look, yes, EF 10-15. I mean, when I looked at that left ventricle in the echo, that was the movement. That's not good, y'all. Now, at UAB and at the Kirkland Clinic, it's the advanced cardiac team. So that's the group that you don't go to unless you're referred to because someone else can't fix you. He immediately calls in a nurse to stand by her, and he goes to the desk and calls the floor at the hospital across the street and has her put out on the transplant floor. They said that she had so much backflush or regurgitation through the mitral valve that she would not live 1 year unless she had a mitral valve. But you have to have an EF of at least 35 to put in a new mitral valve to be strong enough to open it. And so we went to the transplant floor. Medications couldn't take those because they would bottom out her blood pressure, so they couldn't do that. And so we prayed a lot. And so I left her down in Birmingham with Carson, and we started doing diet. We started doing, at Duke University. See, when you eat a meal, as we mentioned, it takes 2.5 hours to 5 hours to digest that meal. When you do juice, it takes 15 to 20 minutes for digestion to occur. The second most expenditure of the heart muscle is digestion of food. And so the advanced cardiac team, on a person who just has critical heart failure, they put on a 70-day juice fast because it doesn't take a lot of energy from the heart. And there's plenty of nutrients there. And I hear you got a failing heart, and there's enough nutrients there to supply that heart. And so the juicing, people say, oh, it's not healthy to do juicing. Well, it's enough for you if you're in your heart failure. And so that's what we did. We added hawthorn berry. We added CoQ10. We added magnesium to bowel tolerance, vitamin C, L-carnitine. She was now by this time having some significant edema in the lungs, fluid in the lungs and edema in the legs, significant pitting edema in the legs and the feet. And so we did dandelion leaf. And her EF now, we're now at 4 years later, her EF is 3540. When she went in for her last echo, the mitral valve is closing to a normal female. She says he said it has barely any leakage, but he says females can have that. But he said mitral valve's off the table. Transplants off the table. And they said, just keep doing what you're doing. Usually at Mayo Clinic, at Duke, at UAB, people come in there, they see that problem usually within 10 years of taking adriamycin, some 15. The longest they've ever seen was 25 years. Mary Lou now has the record at UAB for 44 years, and they claim it's due to her lifestyle. Lifestyle is huge. So what do you do for a person with congestive heart failure? Do the same thing I did with Mary Lou. God's the one who does it. Pray. It's not a cookie cutter. Ask Him what else you need to do. We also did cardiac rehab. Cardiac rehab is amazing. We did the magnesium rollerball. Significantly helped. And then I remember on the far infrared changes the water in the blood, the water molecule in the blood, and therefore it causes better perfusion. And so I wanted to be careful. So I called a friend of mine. You remember George Kim? And I called George and I said, George, and he uses far infrared a lot. I said, George, it only makes sense to me that it would be effective. Just want to make sure there's no contraindication. And he says, no, Walt, it's totally safe. So we started doing far infrared because, yes, or the light, either one, the light or the sauna. We did sauna. And she could tell significant improvement in how she felt when she was in the far infrared because because she had such poor perfusion because of the low ejection fraction. When she got in the sauna, it increases the perfusion in the heart, and so she could feel the difference in how she felt. And so far infrared, and so normal far infrared is just 20 minutes, but you can use it long term. But be careful with the heart because you don't want the heart to get too hot. So you sit in there, and you can kind of zip out, let the heat out. If you start getting a little warm, too hot, zip back up. Or a lot of the far infrared saunas has 2 clicks. Just turn one of them on, and you're still getting good benefit. And so you can sit in there for hours as long as you don't get the heart too hot, and you can cool down. But that's what we're doing for her, and we're having good outcome. And so that's what we use for congestive heart failure. The dandelion really helps with the congestion in the lungs and also with the pitting edema. Any cardiac questions? Other cardiac questions? Again, the Duke diet's the best diet I've found other than juicing. And to answer your question on prostate, who had the prostate question? There he is. He's coming down. Prostate. And we'll finish on prostate. I'm wearing y'all out. All right. In early 1990, Duke University found, and I remember I was working in regular health care when this happened, and they came out and said that when there's an issue with prostate, the first thing that they were finding to do was to eliminate dairy. That dairy could cause more problems with the prostate. And so Duke University said discontinue the use of dairy product, all milk product, animal product, milk products. Number one. Number two, there's several things I've used over the years. I've used saw palmetto. Overall, I didn't find it as a big bat. We didn't get it out of the infield. Pumpkin seed works for some people. Pumpkin seed oil can work also well. So we're getting it to second base. But what I have found to be the best to get it out in the outfield is Padiarco. Padiarco, P-A-U, space, D' space, A-R-C-O. Padiarco, 2 dropperfuls, 2 mLs, 1 to 3 times a day, 1 to 3 times a day based on acuity. And add to that black seed oil. Black seed oil. 1 teaspoon twice a day. Black seed oil, yes. Yes, yes. And so some men like it better refrigerated, some men like it better just room temperature. That is what I'm getting the best results with right now. The other is, there's a product by Buried Treasure. It's called Men's Support or something, Prostate Formula. And I'm finding men that product works better for them. Again, it's not a cookie cutter, y'all. You've got to work with that person individually, and you can't say, well, I know everything. And no, we don't. We've got to pray about it, pray about, that person, and ask God what you need to do to help that person. And you just have to, try different things. I'm getting the best results of that. There's another item that you can do. Well, there's a couple more things. Dr. Kim finds that if he uses far infrared light, that's a 700 watt light bulb, or it's actually not a light bulb. It's a ceramic light, and you hold it about a textbook, a textbook is 11 inches off the prostate. Why 11, not 12? I don't know. But 11 inches, if you go to NIH, everything's 11 inches on using it. You want medical grade. And Kim's getting good results with lowering PSA. We're using the far infrared light. For a person that you just can't get it down, and I had a guy that we just could not get it down. And I learned this from one of Dr. Agatha's staff members years ago, and that is milking the prostate. And the way you milk the prostate, every time you have a bowel movement, it milks the prostate. It's right there, and as the fecal material goes by it, it milks it. Well, and this is not a new thing. It's been done for years. But as long as they don't have blood in the urine, as long as they don't have cancer, according to Yuchi, you can put a glove on, and it's like doing an exam. And so you put your index finger in up to about this digit right here, this knuckle here, below this digit, and then you feel the prostate. Now, good prostate should be like this. But if you have it's harder, like this. It's about the size of a walnut. And so you insert your finger till you feel the prostate, and then you massage it from left to right, back and forth. Not back to front, but from side to side. And why that is, I don't know, because when you're having a bowel movement, it's pushing down from the top. But anyway, that's what they said at Yuchi. And it's working. It's working. And so you do it for about 5 minutes to 10 minutes, 4 times a day. That's not something a guy usually wants to do.
I don't think it's something my wife wants to do.
But if you got a problem and you can't urinate, I get guys that come in and say, I can barely go, it's hurting. They're willing to do that. And so I have found that can be helpful. Now, when you milk the prostate, your PSA is going to go up. Now remember this. PSA was developed as a trending tool, not a diagnostic tool. And many times today it's used as a diagnostic tool. Oh, you've got a PSA of 30, you've got cancer. I've had guys come in with PSA of 30 and not have cancer, and guys come in with a 2-point-something and they have cancer. And so it's a trending tool. Don't use it as a diagnostic tool. Anyway, if that can help you on prostate. Well, y'all, I think about worn y'all out as I'm looking across the room. And so I don't want to wear you out. Tomorrow, we're going to do Oak Mountain Remedies. That's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Yes, sir?
One more, the dosage when you spoke about hawthornberry.
When you're taking hawthornberry? For the heart. Okay, so dosage on hawthornberry, remember it has a half-life of 4 hours, so you want to do it 4 times a day. If you're doing capsules, 1 to 3 capsules 4 times a day. 1 to 3 capsules 4 times a day. But here's what the medical community would say. Oh, be careful using hawthorn berry because it can lower blood pressure. And if you use it along with your medication, it can drive you hypotensive. That's like taking Genema Silvestri, and your blood sugar goes down low. And because it's working so well, and don't take that because it might make you, your blood sugar low. Well, cut back on the medication. And so if you're taking hawthorn berry for any issues, even if you don't have hypertension, a lot of the cardiac meds can lower blood pressure. Along with hawthorn berry can push it lower. So monitor your blood pressure. If it starts getting lower, number one, ask the medical director. Ask God. I really believe in that, y'all. I mean, you go buy a house, you ask God, should I buy it? You go buy a car, that don't feel right. No, I ain't going to buy that car. Or, I really feel comfortable. I feel that's what God wants me to do. People do not tap in to asking God questions. Oh, no, he doesn't have an MD. God don't need no MD, y'all. God's the creator. And we need to have that kind of faith that we go to God. I'm not saying leave your docs. I'm saying talk to God. And if you're a physician, and if you say, listen, I've really talked to God about this and I'm not comfortable, and the doc goes, listen, I'm the physician here, then you need another physician. And I don't know what docs are around here, but in my neck of the woods, in the Bible Belt, a lot of them go, okay, let's work with you. Let's see what God has to help for us. Because they're Christians. Find you a Christian doctor. And if you have a Christian doctor that don't believe in talking to God, then you need to find another Christian doctor that believes in talking to God. But that's important. When you do these things, do them wisely. Don't, study and do it with understanding. So tomorrow, you want to come talk about it tomorrow?
Thank you once again to Walt for a great afternoon and learning all the things that we've learned. I just want to thank the Lord that he's given him so much information that he can give over to us. And then, of course, we can share it with other people as well. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, if you could be there a little bit earlier, maybe 9:45, we're going to start right on time at 10 o'clock. And Walt is going to show us how to do extracts and how to do other mountain remedies, they call them. And I'm thinking that's from the Appalachia area. So that's what I'm figuring because that's where he's from. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to be using blenders. I'm not quite sure if we're all going to be partaking. Are we all doing it separate, or you're going to show us once and then we're going to do hands-on? We're all going to take home something? What is...
It depends on the items we can get.
It depends on what?
The items that we can get.
Oh, the items. Yes, I'm going shopping after Sabbath tonight. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So come with lots of questions and lots of ready to do. Do they need to bring aprons or any kind of...
They can.
Okay. Is it going to be messy? Is it going to...
One of the items is going to be messy.
Okay, bring your stuff to get messy. It's going to be at the Better Living Center. Yes, it will be there at 10 o'clock. And Walt will be flying out tomorrow. So this will be the last time we get to take part of his information. Yes. Yes.
Oh, it's 10 o'clock till what time?
He's flying out tomorrow. It's probably going to be from about 10 to 12. Okay. Do we need more than one blender?
One will do.
One will do, and we already have one. But thank you so much for offering. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Yes. That's correct. I was told to say that. And I did not. Thank you. Yes, it will not be live streamed tomorrow because we're at the Better Living Center. Anything else? I'm going to close with prayer and just be very thankful that we've been able to spend the afternoon together, and get out there and get your 20 minutes of walk-in because it's a beautiful afternoon. Let's bow our heads for prayer. Father, we love you. We thank you that you have made our bodies as you have, and we thank you that you have given us health, that we can learn about it, and that we can increase how we live on this earth. And we do know that this is not our home. So we know that when we get to heaven, we're not going to need all these herbs, but while we're here, we do. So we thank you, Father, that you've given us Walt this weekend and that we've been able to learn from him. And we just thank you and give him safety as he travels back home tomorrow, and give us all safety as we go back to our homes tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Yes.